Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto trained by Mito Ghost Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for Part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Naruto was no stranger to pain. It had been his one companion throughout his life, from the blows he had suffered at the hands of the orphanage workers, to the constant abuse he suffered at Sakura-chan's hands. So why did it hurt so much when she ignored him for Sasuke once again, even though he had fought Sannin and almost died to bring Bachan to heal them? Naruto was walking down the streets of Konoha, his hands lazily tucked inside his voluminous jacket, and his eyes slitted against the glare of the sun. A random passerby would never notice anything was bothering him, though, Naruto thought bitterly, nobody would notice even if he was suddenly missing an arm. Contrary to popular belief that Naruto was annoyingly cheerful, Naruto often sulked, if not outright brooded. What made him different from other career brooders was the simple fact that he never let anybody see him in the act. Today, though, as he left the Konoha General Hospital, he found himself far too preoccupied to bother with what others saw of him. Sakura would probably never know how much heartache and introspection she had caused by the simple and by now almost instinctual act of ignoring Naruto. Trying to wrap his mind around the strange feelings of abandonment that had decided to plague him today, Naruto didn't pay any attention to his surroundings until he almost had a very intimate meeting with a tree. Sufficiently brought out of funk, he took notice of his surroundings, only to let out a bitter giggle. Of course his feet would come here, when he was thinking about the possible folly he had committed in even entering the ninja academy. This was where his journey had truly begun after all, where he had taken down the traitor Mizuki. This was the place where he had accepted the duties of a ninja of Konoha, where he had officially become a ninja. Now, almost 8 months later, he found himself questioning his decision to become a shinobi of the leaf. After all, the young him had wanted to become a ninja as a means of recognition, pining for the kind of acknowledgement that a ninja got in the Leaf Village. Well, he had had that notion quickly corrected. A genin Naruto was even less welcome around Konoha than an academy student Naruto, and as a genin he was forced to interact with the very villagers who routinely sneered and belittled him. The first days as a genin he had held on to some hope that his team would at least accept him. He had been proven wrong soon enough. Naruto had no illusions about Sasuke. As the boy had said in his introduction, he was a person who would never let himself get close enough to a person to be considered anyone's friend. And to be honest, Naruto thought, he really did not want to try. In addition to his holier-than-thou approach towards him, his very existence was a constant reminder of what Naruto didn't have, and seeing him waste the goodwill of Konoha left a bad taste in his mouth. Kakashi had once been his hero, when he had protected him from the shadows as an ANBU. Really, did he think that Naruto wouldn't identify his scent? But ever since his appointment as sensei of Team 7 it had waned, along with the tolerance at his bad excuses. Naruto acknowledged that he may fundamentally be a good person, but he was a terrible teacher. But he would have let that go. After all, he wasn't the worst teacher he had. Mizuki came to mind, if not for the obvious favoritism to the resident broody Uchiha of the team. When he had pawned Naruto off to the awful poser called Ebisu, he had cracked the final bit of gratitude that had kept Naruto from grouping him with the others who belittled him. Naruto closed his eyes as he lay down on a horizontal branch that protruded from a nearby tree, and he sighed. By logical progression, the next person would be Sakura, but it hurt to think about her. Naruto still remembered the shy little girl that he had watched from a distance at the park, too afraid even then of rejection and ridicule to go and talk, but still longing to help her with the bullying she got from her classmates. Then he had not stepped in, afraid of the parents' reaction to seeing him with their children, but that guilt he had carried with him for a long time. That was what had led him to talk to her in the academy, and asked to be her friend in the only way he knew how, which was the way he had observed people become friends in the parks around Konoha. Of course, now he knew that what he had observed was a boy asking a girl to a date, but at the moment the only thing he had noticed was the way the girl's face lit up, and the hugs and affection the couple had shared. Being rather starved for attention, he had longed for that, so in a fit of recklessness he had charged in after the academy had finished, asking the pretty Sakura-chan to a date. He clearly remembered the ridicule that little outburst brought upon him, when Sakura used her ridicule of him as a stepping stone to enter into the elite group at the academy. After that, it had become a matter of pride to him. After all, if he could get the popular Sakura to be his friend, surely he would get accepted? Now, looking back at his reasons for chasing after her friendship, it felt so hollow, so baseless, so deceptive. But that was not a problem. In fact, it was almost a relief to finally be rid of that yoke tying him down. However, paradoxically, it was exactly this that bothered him the most. Haku's words in the forest kept reverberating in his mind. When a person has someone important to protect, that's when they can become truly strong. Now that the others in Team 7 were officially persona non grata to him, he found himself wondering what he had to tie himself down to Konoha. The old man was dead, and even before his death, Naruto had been unsure of his intentions, and rather leery of opening himself to him after the QB's secret had been revealed. It hurt, wondering whether the only man who had been kind to him had done that with the ulterior motive in mind, but it was something he could not help pondering whenever he thought back to those early ramen runs. Surely the Hokage did not do that with all orphans. Excluding them, the only people he had any connection to were the Ichirakus, Irika, and Konohamaru. All of them had ulterior motives for his acquaintance, with the old man pushing Irika into socializing with him, the Ichirakus gaining a significant portion of their income via him, and Konohamaru's own pride. Still, they stuck with him, and for that he would be thankful. Naruto sighed. Introspection was tiring work, he thought as he absent-mindedly tapped the branch below him. An ominous crack echoed through the clearing, making Naruto look up in alarm. The place he was tapping on the branch had given way, revealing a layer of older bark that was lit up by a strange seal, arcane characters lit up in ominous crimson. A seal? What was a seal doing in an ordinary tree branch, and how in the world had it activated? Naruto instinctively jumped off the branch, half expecting the tree to explode in a burst of flames. However, as soon as his hand left the branch, the glowing seals dimmed, the light softly pulsing as opposed to glaring. Hastily searching for some explanation for the sudden unexplained activation, he suddenly noticed that the blood from when his fingernails had been driven into his palms was still coating his hands. Could the seal have been activated by his blood? No. That was impossible, he told himself as he approached the gently pulsing seal, now certain that it wouldn't explode. Instead, he carefully crept near the strange seal, carefully analyzing it. Seals had always been a point of interest to Naruto. He seemed to have an instinctive understanding of the subject. In fact, he would probably have been at the top of the class in the sealing introductory class at the academy, if it hadn't been for Hoshi-sensei, who had hated his guts. Later on, he had looked them up whenever he could, until the old man had heard of his interests. How he knew, Naruto would never know, and visited his apartment, making him promise to stop studying Fuinjutsu for reasons he wouldn't explain. Naruto had needed a whole week of all-you-can-eat ramen before he had agreed. Still, Naruto still occasionally dabbled in the study of the esoteric art, and therefore he could tell just by looking at the seal that it was a work of art. The seal's base matrix was somewhat unusual, being a helical base that was covered up using a spiral design concealment cipher. The design itself looked old, but that particular arrangement was one Naruto had seen before, on the protective seals woven into the massive wooden walls surrounding the village. However, that was not the most intriguing part of the puzzle as far as Naruto was concerned. That honor belonged to the activation sequence of the seal. There, at the very center of the helical base, was an ink circle surrounding the kanji of self, family, and blood linked by a combination rune. The ink circle was surrounded by rings and rings of arcane script that detailed restrictions on what the containment seal, for this obviously was one, would release. This was what had Naruto so puzzled, and in a small part of his mind, hopeful. That this sealing structure was on the barrier meant that it has been around for some time, but it hadn't even been mentioned in passing in any of the beginner sealer scripts that he had stolen. That meant that it was probably a clan style, but with the activation sequence only allowing a blood relative of the sealer to activate the seal. Naruto looked at the glowing seal with an increasing sense of wonder. All the evidence pointed to one conclusion. Whoever this clan was, he had found a familial connection. With the growing excitement, Naruto continued to peruse the strangely complex seal. There was the relay, the storage seal, the inhibitor seal, an identification seal, a shock seal. Naruto shuddered in sympathy. Those seals hurt. Furthermore, there was a plea to the guardian spirits, and an emergency total unseal. Naruto barely managed to stifle his yell of triumph. Even if the blood seal part had been unlocked, it had been an overall locking mechanism that concealed the very presence of the seal. Typically, unlocking its contents would have required an activation password that was obviously out of his reach. Sure, it was still possible to contain the sealed items by nullifying the seal itself, but that would require seal work far beyond his comprehension. Currently his strength was in analyzing seals, not creating them. He could barely make a successful exploding tag. However, the emergency unseal provided an out. The emergency unseal worked on a simple principle: blood and password. However, it differed from the others in that the password had to be specified in the seal's structure itself in kanji. Therefore, any person with a relatively good knowledge of seals could open this seal, if they had managed to open the blood seal. Grinning infectiously, Naruto bit his own finger, pressing on it until a drop of blood formed on the pad of his finger. Using this, he carefully wrote the kanji for blood on the center of the designated empty runic circle. An ethereal pulse of golden chakra spread throughout the forest, with Naruto barely managing to cling onto the branch due to his instinctual use of chakra. Suddenly, the forest was unnaturally silent. Then the pop of a storage seal unsealing echoed, along with the customary puff of chakra smoke. As the smoke blew away, a large bejeweled scroll was visible to Naruto's hungry gaze. It was precariously balanced on the branch, along with another smaller, plain scroll. Even as Naruto scrambled to catch the scroll before it hit the ground, he was puzzled by the appearance of the scroll. Why go to all that trouble just to seal a scroll? It was not as if the seal could have contained anything else. The emergency unseal essentially short-circuited the dimension stability component in the storage, causing anything stored in the other dimension to manifest in the material world. He was abruptly interrupted as his hand closed on the smaller scroll, as when his skin touched the scroll, it caused a sudden suctioning effect on his chakra, causing him to stumble on his landing on his tailbone with a lurch. The suctioning was getting worse. Naruto was not the most chakra-sensitive ninja in Konoha, and his skill in internal chakra manipulation was just short of horrible, but even he could sense his chakra output surge out of his control, inexorably pulled towards the insatiable scroll stuck in his left hand. He could dimly feel the larger, more ornate scroll roll away from his thrashing body, but he couldn't muster enough strength to go after it. The surroundings were getting duller to the senses, the world was spinning, and his body was racked with violent cramps. He faintly recalled Iruka-sensei described these symptoms as those of severe chakra depletion, but at that time he had not really listened to it. Those days, he had considered himself far too awesome to succumb to something as plebeian as chakra exhaustion, and later his tenant had made sure that he was never really short of it. For some reason though, this time the Kyuubi was not supplying chakra as he normally would. Naruto whimpered as he curled himself into a ball, violent tremors overcoming his body as the scroll continued to resist his attempts to remove it. He could feel that he was close to unconsciousness, and he all but welcomed it. Suddenly, he was feeling even more disorientated as the chakra that had been siphoned away from the body began to flow back into the body from the scroll. It was a strange feeling, part sudden relief, as if a muscle he had not realized was tensed had suddenly relaxed, and part uncomfortable pressure, as he often got when he gorged on ramen. The scroll was still firmly stuck to his hand, and the flow of chakra was not showing signs of lessening. When he took a closer look at the small scroll, Naruto's eyes widened in disbelief at the sight. The once plain red-capped scroll was crawling in minute golden symbols, kanji and katakana mixed with several types of ancient hieroglyphs that Naruto had only seen in passing. And they were moving, replicating, morphing in a perpetually shifting pattern that baffled the eye. That was just not possible. Naruto may have not been the most dedicated scholar, but he took sealing seriously. And according to what he had learned, the very principles of the art dictated that it was simply impossible to form a self-updating array. Just what was this scroll? The worst part was, now that he could think again, he realized that it was inadvisable to remove the scroll until whatever it did was complete. Otherwise, seeing as it was directly connected to his chakra network, it might damage his chakra coils enough to render them incapable of molding chakra, and that was possibly the last thing he wanted to do. His muscles protested his attempts to get up, and he rolled over onto his back in disgust, holding the hand stuck to the scroll in front of him. He could see the large scroll caught in the underbrush, and the setting sun through the canopy of the treetops. Staring at the scroll got old pretty fast, Naruto noted, after staring blearily at the irritating object for close to quarter of an hour. His spewing of curses had finished a few minutes ago, when he had run out of expletives to use for the scroll. The golden script covering the scroll had begun to pulse, its glow ebbing and flowing with his pulse. There was a persistent itch on his lower back that was annoying the hell out of him. He was feeling supercharged from the excess chakra in his coils, and his muscles still felt like limp noodles attached to his limbs, rendering any immediate plans of relocation moot. The rhythmic movement of the glowing script was slowly increasing in speed, slowly building up to a crescendo. He could feel his chakra flowing through the coils mimic it, flowing agitated through his coils, building momentum. Whatever the scroll was going to do, it was going to happen soon. In spite of himself, the anticipation was getting to him, along with a hitherto unknown emotion, fear. The flowing, morphing symbols were hypnotic, as was the feeling of the chakra flowing within his body. However, the itch was getting ever more insistent. The primal, tribal rhythm reached the apex, the golden script lighting up like a miniature sun. Naruto was wreathed in a bluish chakra aura as it crashed into the walls of his chakra coils in waves and waves of pressure. Naruto's blood was singing in his ears, his body seemed ready to itself apart. The itch suddenly escalated, transforming into a blinding pain. Naruto's eyes widened as pain speared into his lower back, along with a sudden snapping sound that made him fear for his bones. A suddenly blank scroll fell from his nerveless fingers as he was propelled upwards by an unknown object pressing harshly into his lower back. Coming to an abrupt stop suspended about 6 feet above ground, Naruto looked around in alarm to find that the surrounding was crisscrossed with thick, cable-like golden chains that seemed somehow insubstantial. They formed a bowl-shaped grid around him, and it was obvious that it was what was holding him suspended. Well, this wasn't what I expected to see. A cultured female voice spoke from behind him, laced with a hint of amusement. Naruto turned instinctively, the chains holding him up subconsciously aiding him, only to come face to face with the woman who had spoken. The woman looked to be in her early 30s, dressed head to toe in white. Her crimson hair was fashioned into twin buns at the sides of her head and held there with several samban, while an intricate seal stood in the center of her forehead. But that was not what was concerning Naruto right now. Instead, all his concerns were centered on the fact that the woman in question was translucent. Naruto could make out the outlines of the tree trunks behind her through her torso, even as she tilted her head to look at him curiously. GG Ghost. With a terrified scream, Naruto instinctively thrust his hands forward, the chains following the motion as 4 large chains with sharpened hooks for ends speared into the form of the ethereal woman. As they passed harmlessly through the figure, Naruto could feel his chakra getting sapped again. What are you? He managed to stutter, before his body gave up on him and he collapsed in a heap, out cold. Naruto woke up to the sound of birdsong. Slowly opening his crusted eyes, he got up from his uncomfortable position on the ground. He paused to make a face in disgust. Soil did not taste good, especially in the morning before he could brush his teeth. He would know, he had checked. Now what had he done this time to sleep in the woods? Naruto was used to sleeping in the woods. In fact, he had slept in them consistently for over a year between his forced ejection from his childhood home, the orphanage of Western Konoha, and him being found by a kind old man who gave him the apartment he lived in now. He still slept in the woods from time to time, when the pressures of living with people who hated him got to him, or when he wanted to cause some destruction in order to let out his feelings cathartically without doing something drastic like punching Sasuke's smug face in. Training himself to exhaustion just to get rid of his feelings was nothing new to him, though he had cut back recently. This must have been the first time he did it since his meeting with Haku in the woods of Nami no Kuni. Idly looking at the sky, he found that it was exceptionally early. It was only 6 a.m. Kakashi-sensei did not come to the training grounds till well past 11, which left him with almost 5 hours till the team met. In a way, he was glad. He was not eager to meet his team right now with the wound of his rejection still fresh. Looking around the clearing for any stray kunai he may have used, throwing kunai were an incredible way to relieve stress, he found an odd sight. A bejeweled scroll cap peeking from the underbrush. That triggered his memory of what had happened here. In a flash, he was pulling the scroll out of the bushes, holding it almost reverently between his hands as he examined it. It was real. It was something that was entirely his, something belonging to his family. With trembling hands, he reached to pry it open. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Naruto turned around in surprise, coming face to face with the speaker, who was pale, translucent, dressed in an ornate pure white long-sleeved kimono and looked like a noblewoman. Not that Naruto was particularly concentrating on that. He was firmly rooted in the translucent part of the observation. GG Ghost. In a motion that looked inherently strange in an incorporeal being, the wraith winced, putting translucent hands in front of translucent torso in the universal instinctive warding gesture. Naruto was having real trouble getting over the translucent part. Then she spoke. Her voice was soft and quiet, yet firm and cultured, and she seemed quite cross with him. I'm getting a sense deja vu. She sighed. You know, for a novice you wield those infernal chains of yours pretty well. Though that doesn't mean you should spear them through me. GG Ghost. A gusty sigh escaped the ghost's lips. You know, for an Uzumaki you're unusually timid. She paused. And repetitive. Very repetitive. Hey! Who are you calling timid, Databeo? The taunt got Naruto's attention, but a split second later he remembered what he was speaking to. Please don't eat me. Or do anything else why you GG ghosts do. I'm not a ghost. The ghost refuted hotly. Naruto wordlessly pointed towards her body. The ghost looked down, only to scream at her see-through body. After recovering from her abrupt scream, which had not consisted of him screaming his head off and running up a tree, Naruto looked at the ghost to find her interestedly prodding at her own body and muttering to herself. It looks like the visibility array malfunctioned, you know, though the solidity array works pretty well as the de-aging seal. She prodded her own body again, before shrugging. You know, I am a genius. Naruto looked on open-mouthed, as the ghost continued to prod her own body in apparent detached interest. Hello, Ghost-san, who the hell are you and what are you doing here, Databeo? Said ghost looked up, and judging by the frosty expression on her face wasn't very pleased with the question. You know, it's Mito-sama to you little boy, didn't your parents ever teach you to be polite? That had Naruto on the defensive. Hey, you can't go around telling me what to do, creepy ghost lady. He moped. You're being really rude, Databale. And I'm an orphan, so there? For the first time in the conversation, Mito seemed to have difficulty forming a sentence. Is that so? She inquired hesitantly. What about cousins? A shake of the head. Any relations? No. I'm the only Uzumaki in Konoha or anywhere else. I've never met any relatives, I don't have a fancy clan, and I don't want to talk to you. Why are you asking anyway? Mito's eyes softened in understanding, even as she gasped in realization. Are you Kushina's boy? Naruto shook his head again. Never knew my parents, nobody in Konoha knows who my parents are, even Hokage didn't know. Mito frowned. And you haven't ever heard of the Uzumaki clan? Naruto scoffed. Never heard of an Uzumaki clan. What are you trying to say, anyway? That I'm from some sort of fancy clan? Yeah, right. That'll be the day. Ghost lady, Konoha doesn't treat people of clans like they do me. Mito's eyes widened with realization. You dropped the creepy part, It's nice to know I'm only ghost lady now. Mito observed with a slight smile, even as her eyes smoldered with anger at the realization of what had happened. Anyway, she continued casually, you wouldn't happen to be a Jinchuriki, would you? Naruto choked on his breath. What? Why would you even ask that? His voice rose an octave in his attempt to deflect the question, and Naruto cursed his voice under his breath. Why did his voice have to start cracking now, of all times? Mito looked at him sternly, and Naruto tried not to quail under her stare. For a shinobi your lying skills are notoriously poor. Your eyes wander, your hands twist together, and you shuffle your feet. As Naruto hurriedly tried to fix the points mentioned, Mito soldiered on. And as for your question, when I lived in Konoha there was another Uzumaki living here, and she was also a Jinchuriki. Only an Uzumaki can successfully hold the Kyuubi. Naruto interrupted her, looking at her with sparkling eyes. Really? Who was she? Do I know about her? Oh wait, he deflated, I checked the shinobi records, there have been no Uzumaki living in Konoha from its start. Naruto narrowed his eyes at Mito. Are you lying to me? Instead of a startled reaction as Naruto half expected, Mito flew into a rage. Erase my records. Oh, this time that old monkey went too far. She stood rooted on her spot, before abruptly turning towards Naruto. Little Sarutobi is still the Hokage, right? Old man died a few weeks back, Orochimaru killed him. Naruto stated flatly. However much he had had doubts of the old man, they had still been very close. The fifth is Senju Tsunade. Little Tsutsu. That's just wonderful. I've got to see her. Naruto stared at her disbelievingly. Little Tsutsu? He repeated hollowly. She'll probably smash me through the wall if I called her that, literally. Just who are you and exactly how old are you, ghost lady? Mito started guiltily. She had completely forgotten to introduce herself. Sorry about that, she said sheepishly. I am Senju, nee Uzumaki Mito, wife of Hashirama Senju, daughter heiress of the Uzumaki clan, and mistress of the sealing arts. And if you're who I think you are, then I'm your great-great-grandmother. Nice to meet you. Naruto flapped his jaw futilely for a moment. That's real nice, ghost lady, he mumbled weakly. I think I'll take a nap now. With that, Naruto fell backwards in a dead faint. You should get that looked into. Naruto simply groaned. So, ghost lady, what are you going to do now? Mito grinned slightly. Well, Naruto-kun, before I answer that, what do you know of the Uzumaki clan? Of nothing, I guess. Mito stared at him, before sighing and calling him over to the edge of the crater created by the chakra chains in the first scroll. As they both sat down on an uprooted tree, Mito began her story. You know what? I'll tell you the story the way my mother told me, back when I was a small girl growing up in the islands of Whirlpool. Once upon a time, about 1,000 years ago, the world was a very different place. The countries in the world were different, and they all had armies of samurai. Ninja lived in small hidden enclaves, never seen by civilians, and only accepting missions through contacts. It was a simple life, but they were happy. Then, one day, a god and a goddess came down to Earth to spend some time together. But the goddess fell in love with the Earth, and she refused to leave, instead spending her time frolicking among the flowers and spurning the god's affections. In time, the god, who was in love with the goddess, became jealous of the Earth and the flowers as he felt they had stolen his love from him. Therefore he hatched a plan. Going into the underworld and plucking a seed from a tree there, the god snuck into the goddess' garden and planted the seed there. In time, this seed grew into a beautiful tree, growing on the negative emotions that plagued the world. For you see, this was no ordinary plant, but a demon child. When the goddess saw the beautiful tree in her garden, she was overjoyed, and tried to pet the plant like she did every other tree in her garden. However, the demon in the plant couldn't bear to come close to the goddess, therefore it scratched her hand in fright. Horrified by her bleeding hand, the goddess swore to never garden again, choosing to leave Earth with the overjoyed god, who in his happiness forgot to return the plant to the underworld. In time, this tree would grow very large, and began to be worshipped by the people as a symbol of God. However, the negative emotions wafting from the tree spread discord, causing the lands to descend into chaos, with tribe fighting tribe, clan fighting clan, and country fighting country. In time, it came to be that one small fledgling nation gained custody of the land containing the demon tree. This kingdom was ruled by the clan calling themselves the Otsutsuki, and they had a princess called Kagaya. She was fascinated by the tree and would often visit it in her walks around the palace. One day she saw that the tree had borne fruit, and thinking that with the strength of the gods she would be able to stop the constant bloodshed, she consumed it. The fruit deformed her, and in despair she fled her country. Her desperate desire to heal the world would stop most of the corruption, but the power had warped her, not only in body but in mind. In time she would emerge from the shadows, a godlike being with unspeakable power, to unite all nations under her oppressive fist. Her kingdom was not to last. The demon had felt its power being used by another, and it grew enraged. Transforming into a demonic creature with 10 tails, it stampeded through the world, leaving chaos in its wake. Meanwhile, among the humans, Hagoromo, the son of Kagaya, overthrew his mother, leading a rebellion to free the lands from her rule. Having inherited his mother's powers in an even more concentrated form, therefore he was the person the people turned to save them from the rampaging demon. Meeting the 10 tails in an abandoned valley, Hagoromo battled it for 7 days and 7 nights, finally managing to wound it fatally, before sealing its essence inside himself and the body inside the moon. Hagoromo gave rise to the Age of Ninja, and his teaching of Nishu spread across the lands. He is known as the hero of the world, and as the god of shinobi. He is also the creator of the Biju, and the progenitor of the Senju, Uchiha, and Uzumaki clans. It is said that on his deathbed, the man now known as the Sage of Six Paths divided his philosophy among his 3 children. To the eldest son, who had found the Uchiha clan, he gave his insight and vision, the ability to see the nature of human conflict. He also inherited the strong spiritual presence of his father. To the younger son, who had found the Senju clan, he gave his pragmatism, his grasp on emotion, the ability to recognize love and inspire it. He inherited the strong physical presence of his father. To his daughter, who had found the Uzumaki clan, he gave his courage, his will, his ability to weather the storms of circumstance to reach their goals. She inherited the unique mind of her father, allowing her to see things from different perspectives, which she would later incorporate into our unique sealing style. The Uchiha were the first to turn from the path set for them by the sage. Horrified by the reality of the world and unable to handle it, they sought to cleanse the world by baptism of fire, espousing that the world was too corrupt to save. The second to turn from the path were the Senju. Horrified by the crimes committed by the Uchiha, they nevertheless stayed their hand blinded by their love for peace and their wish to save people who did not want to be saved, refusing to strike down even those who deserved it. The Uzumaki alone stayed true to our values as time went on. Never choosing a side between the warring brothers, they would be a constant in an ever-changing world. And that is what the philosophy of the Uzumaki is, Naruto-kun. What do you mean? An Uzumaki endures, an Uzumaki survives, an Uzumaki does not compromise their values, and an Uzumaki always keeps his eyes on the objective. Mito's lips twitched in a slight grin. That is why we were so feared, you know, Naruto-kun. Because a true Uzumaki was the ultimate shinobi. You know, it took 3 elemental nations and their entire armies to bring Yuzushiogakure, the home of the Uzumaki, down in the First Shinobi War. And my brother, Uzumaki Shin, was the clan head at that time. Took the entire force of Iwa's Boulder unit to bring him down, and he still didn't go without taking the entire lot with him, you know. Naruto listened to Mito ramble on about the Uzumaki clan with a small content smile on his face. Listening to the stories of his kin brought to him a strange sort of relief, like an ache that he had carried in his heart for a long time had healed. Maybe he was losing his mind, talking to a ghost, and he might wake up tomorrow with a lump on his head to find that he had been hallucinating, but right now, he wouldn't give this moment up for the world. Naruto yawned tiredly when Mito finally paused in her recital of life in the Uzumaki clan. Ghost lady, it's getting a bit late, isn't it? I should probably go back. Some people get a little fidgety when I'm not around for some time. It was true. ANBU still got shivers down their collective spines when they thought of the great itching powder incident. It was quite normal for them to deploy additional squads to locate the Uzumaki when no ANBU personnel had sighted him for more than 24 hours. Mito got an immensely guilty look on her face, and though she was quick to mask it, Naruto, who had trained himself to read others' emotions towards him, especially after the Mizuki incident, caught it. With a hidden core of rising panic, Naruto turned to Mito. "Ghost lady, why did you flinch?" Mito wet her lips a bit nervously. How to tell you this, Naruto-kun, the scroll that summoned me, it had 2 seals inscribed." "2 seals? You told me that the scroll simply used my chakra to power an array that materialized your conscience stored inside the scroll into a physical form." Mito flinched again. Though she had not told that outright, she had implied it, preferring to leave this for later. After all, breaching the subject of altering the genetic makeup of a person without their consent was a delicate proposition. "That is true, Naruto-kun, but not the whole truth." She gulped. "You know, I created this scroll so that an heir of the Uzumaki legacy would find themselves attracted to the scroll. By then I was around 80 years old." She smirked at Naruto's slack jaw, "and there was no direct lineage to the Uzumaki clan. The only other was Kushina, who I suspect is your mother, and she was smitten with a boy from a small local clan and planned to take his name, leaving the Uzumaki clan extinct." She sighed. "I think she wanted to forget. The Uzumaki had sent her away to be Kyuubi's next Jinchuriki just before they were," she choked over the word, destroyed. "She didn't have a very amicable split with her family, and next thing she knew her family was dead. Poor girl." Sighing to herself again, Mito resumed her narration. "Anyway, I knew that I couldn't allow it, so I left this scroll. A potential heir would find the scroll due to the slight attraction their chakra had to the scroll, and upon touching it, the scroll would begin a purification process." "A purification process?" Naruto asked quietly, a hint of anger lacing his words. "Yes, a purification process. It would purify your Uzumaki traits, alter your genetic markers, bring out the latent Uzumaki Kekkai Genkai," she gestured at Naruto, "and basically turn you into a full-blooded Uzumaki." "What do you mean, turn you into a full-blooded Uzumaki?" Naruto shouted at Mito, jumping up and patting himself, turning back and forth, trying to find what had happened to him, before he paused. "And what do you mean Kekkai Genkai? I don't have a Kekkai Genkai." Mito smiled, a triumphant grin that for some reason sent shivers down Naruto's spine. "You mean you didn't have a Kekkai Genkai?" Holding out one delicate hand, she gestured. "Observe." From her translucent hand, a wraith-like oriental dragon slowly peeked out, curling gently around her hand. "All Uzumaki have a Kekkai Genkai called chakra expression. We are naturals at form manipulation of chakra, and we can naturally express certain structures of raw chakra which are unique to each individual Uzumaki. As you can see, my expression is dragons. You, if I remember from yesterday, express spike chains. Same as your mother, and my brother, who was your great-great-grandfather." Naruto listened in wonder, forgetting about the chakra purification for the time being. He had a Kekkai Genkai. That would show that bastard Uchiha with his precious pink eye, he thought vindicatively. Mito continued her little lecture, unaware of the thoughts inside Naruto's head. Each expression has a specific specialty. Mine, dragons, are naturally attuned towards offense and genjutsu. I had a cousin who expressed ropes, and they were naturally attuned towards obstruction and genjutsu. Yours I believe to be attuned towards barriers and fuinjutsu, which makes it one of the most coveted expressions in the clan. Then, showing a sliver of a nervous smile, she soldiered on. "So, for all that, I hope you don't mind that you have paler skin and red hair." All blood drained from Naruto's face, which given his recently acquired fair skin tone meant that he looked almost yellow. "I have red hair. Why would you do that? Oh my gosh, I have red hair." As Naruto forcefully tugged at his hair, trying to see its color, as he rapidly descended into a panic attack, Mito smiled to herself. That was the Uzumaki hot temper, which was a highly exaggerated state of panic and chaos that did not last long. She would have been more worried if Naruto had become quiet, closed off, and polite. That was the cold anger that was common with the Uzumaki, a smoldering, frigid hatred that would have taken years to thaw. Which was the main reason most people feared her, as she was always polite, leading many to believe she wanted them hung, drawn, and quartered. Naruto was trying to pull his hair out at the roots now. "What the hell did your scroll do to me? How the hell am I going to explain this to Bachan?" Mito held out a hand in front of her, hoping to pacify the raging ex-blonde. "Now calm down, Naruto-kun, we'll work it." Naruto got into her face, still trying to pull his hair out of his scalp. "I'm not going to calm down, ghost lady. I'm a blonde. I will always be a blonde." With a cloud of depression hanging over his head, he flopped bonelessly to the ground. Do you know how bad my jumpsuit would look with red hair? Mito stared at him for a moment. I can see. She deadpanned. However, I hardly think looking like someone thatched your head would make that monstrosity look presentable. She glared at the jumpsuit. Naruto's head snapped back at that, all evidence of his funk forgotten, and Mito had to restrain a smile. Sometimes he acted so like Hashirama it was just cute. Hey! He pouted, looking at Mito with a sulky expression. Don't insult the orange. Mito looked at him in slight disbelief. Well, apart from the fact that you stand out like a walking road sign and the fact that that baggy suit makes you look even more of a midget than you are, I have no problems with that jumpsuit. Anyway, weren't you, going to meet Tsutsu? Naruto grumbled, even as he picked up his discarded jacket and the large scroll and started to tree-hop to civilization, turning his back on Mito. It's not like she can talk, Databeo. She's wearing white. But white is the color of the elite, Naruto-kun, Mito said from right behind him, causing him to jump. Ignoring Naruto's startled curse, she continued. In the ancient days, a shinobi wore white as a sign of confidence, as it said to their opponent that they were not even going to get bloodstains on their clothes. Don't do that! Naruto screamed at Mito, still panting from his fright. I could have thrown a kunai at you. Mito smirked. You aren't very good at the thinking business, are you? Naruto, I haven't come back to life. That would require something like the Edo Tensei of Tobirama-kun, and I was never that much of a freak. She gestured at her own body with an airy gesture. This body is only a chakra construct housing my conscience, though I am glad I decided to de-age me. And she thinks she isn't a freak. Naruto muttered under his breath in disbelief. What was that? Mito asked, turning towards Naruto with a demonic expression. Nothing. Absolutely nothing at all. Naruto squeaked. She shook her head. Anyway, this is just a chakra shell. That's why I didn't die when your spiked chains ripped through me, she said, before throwing a reproachful look at him, though the phantom pain still hurt, Hey! Naruto turned towards her indignantly, while still hopping through the treetops, meaning that he was leaping backwards. You can't blame me for that. I don't even know how to bring out the chains, Databeo. Mito's eyes oddly brightened at that, even as Naruto instinctively flinched away from her, almost causing him to lose his balance. Good. I forgot I have to train you in the Uzumaki ways, Naruto-kun. Can't have the future clan head ignorant, can we? Today, after your team practice, we can come back here and begin our training proper. Isn't that great? Naruto twitched nervously. Normally he wouldn't pass up free training, but this time some inner instinct was screaming at him that he would regret agreeing. He knew why a moment later. After all, in the Uzumaki clan we have this special way of teaching the fighting arts. It's called Try Not to Die. Oh, this is going to be so fun! Mito exclaimed, rubbing her hands together with a disturbing grin. By now, Naruto had beads of sweat dripping down his face, before he paused and thought. Why was he being afraid? Surviving was something he knew how to do. He grinned. Bring it on, ghost lady. If your bones aren't creaking of age, that is. He was answered with a scroll to the face. Looking at the scroll, he was a bit freaked out to find that it was the scroll that had brought Mito in the first place. Keep it, Mito groused, a bit ruffled by the jab at her age. If something destroys the chakra shell, you can bring me back using that. Speaking of which, I'm going to try something. Seeing as I can't walk around half-transparent without everyone thinking I'm a ghost, I'm going to try something. She held her hands in the ram position, concentrating. Wow. That is so much better. Naruto deadpanned, looking at the still translucent woman. Oh, shut up. Mito groused. Just then, something seemed to click into place, and Mito gradually started to disappear from view. Soon, Naruto was alone in the clearing. He looked around a bit warily. Hello? Ghost lady? Yes, Naruto-kun. A voice whispered in his ear. Naruto bit back a scream. Don't do that. Turning towards the voice, Naruto came face to face with nothing. Naruto stared for a moment before gentle giggling issued from in front of him. Blinking, Naruto reached out in front of him, his hand coming to rest on something solid and soft. Then a tremendous punch met his face, and he tumbled into the ground from the tree branches. A shout followed him. Pervert! Naruto bounded into the Hokage tower looking rather nauseated, and annoyed Mito invisibly ghosting behind him. Naruto was grumbling while nursing a rather considerable bruise on his cheek. How was I supposed to know where you were? If you didn't want that to happen, you shouldn't have turned invisible in the first place. Crazy women. A scowling Mito hissed in his ear. Naruto-san. The guards are watching you. The tower guards looked at each other over his head as he waved to them as he entered the building, as he appeared to talk to himself. One of the ANBU twitched his wrist in an undulating motion. How many targets? Of course, ANBU sign language being the combat-oriented language it was, they could not exactly convey what they needed to ask, but it worked well enough in non-combat roles to get the point across. The ANBU on the other side looked spooked. He was a censor, and he had noticed a change in the orange-wearing teen's chakra signature, but there had been only one presence crossing his post. So who had he been talking to? 1. Anomaly in target. Inconclusive. Orders? The ANBU captain's gaze immediately fixed itself on a nearby wall. A moment later, a part of the wooden wall protruded outwards, gaining color as it did so. The man that emerged from the wall, who was wearing a tiger ANBU mask, immediately shone to the captain's position. He leant over, whispering into the captain's ear. Sir? Tora, what is the presence of the demon's chakra? Completely vanished, sir. It's like it isn't even there. The ANBU captain stared at the Mokotan user, a befuddled expression on his face. Explain. Sir, the seal leaks some of Kyuubi's chakra at all times, but it was missing just now. It's as if the boy was not a Jinchuriki. The ANBU captain started. In a flash he signaled the censor, who was still staring after the blonde Jinchuriki. Signs of genjutsu or any chakra use? None. He stared at Tora, who stared back. If they initiated a detainment sequence, word would get out about the capture from the office Nin, and it would possibly set Naruto back a few years in his attempt to gain the recognition of the populace. It had been only their involvement that had kept lynch mobs from forming a few years back. On the other hand, if it was a hinged assassin. I don't get paid enough for this, he groused, ready to issue the order, regardless of consequences, when an argument wafted down to them. Are you drinking again, you old hag? Shut up, you brat. Crash. Never mind. Not even an assassin was stupid enough to insult Tsunade of the Sannin to her face, not to mention that if one of her punches did not disrupt a genjutsu, nothing would. Muscles noticeably relaxed, he ordered the ANBU back to their posts. As he resumed his monotonous duties as captain of the guard, a stray thought came to his mind. Why was he wearing a turban? While Naruto and Tsunade had their customary greeting, and Naruto promptly had his meeting with the heavy oak door of the office, Mito looked unbemused. Her little Tsutsu-chan was all grown up. And apparently a heavy drinker too, she thought as she wrinkled her nose at the smell of sake coming off the hinged woman. While Tsunade was focusing on Naruto's new headdress. What, you trying to look like a Tsunanin, you brat? She was picking out the hidden people in the room with experienced eyes. Of course, it helped that she had helped design the room she was examining. The room had 15 man-sized hiding spots, 3 on the ceiling, 4 near the windows, 4 set in the corners of the room, and 4 hidden behind furniture in the walls. Only 4 of these were occupied, she only had to figure out which. There. One shadowed elbow peeked out from a hiding spot on the ceiling, and by the orientation she was able to find the others. ANBU liked to stay within sight of other ANBU, as it enabled communication. Now to disable them, as 4 wraith-like dragons formed behind her back, she snapped through a series of hand seals. Uzumaki Hidden Illusion Art, Prismatic Dragons. It was over in a flash. The 4 dragons flared in the colors of the rainbow, and even as Tsunade and the ANBU turned towards the chakra flare, the dragons whipped into the hidden ANBU. As soon as the dragons passed through the ANBU, they sagged, falling over with an odd sigh. They were out cold. Mito gave a cold smirk. Heh. I've still got it. Meanwhile, as soon as the chakra had flared, Tsunade had flipped the desk on end as she yanked Naruto over the overturned desk. Stay put. Let me go, Ba-chan. Tsunade turned an exceptionally serious look on Naruto, prompting him to shut up. But Tsunade was already ignoring him. Naruto sighed. The least Ghost Lady could have done was tell him she was going to thrash the Hokage tower. Tsunade stepped out of the shadow of the desk, scowling. Whoever you are, come out before I make you. She ordered in a stern voice, hoping to prompt the hidden assailant to reveal themselves. Therefore she was slightly surprised when a voice answered her in a conversational tone. Oh, stop it with the crass posturing. You know, little Tsutsu, I think I taught you better than that. I blame Tobirama, he was always a bad influence. Tsunade froze. Then blood rushed to her face, and her knuckles cracked. Naruto winced as she leapt to the source of the voice. her fists blazing with chakra as they came down in a double punch that cracked the floors made of the first Hokage's chakra-seeped wood, causing splinters to fly around her. Then Mito spoke again, this time from the opposite end of the room. So crass, little Tsutsu, your fighting style. You know, as a kunoichi you must show some grace, not run around punching things like a maniac. Seriously, what did that monkey teach you after I was gone? Tsunade gritted her teeth. Whoever you are, this is not funny. If you come out, I'll grant you a quick death. If not, well, she curled her fingers into a fist, chakra rippling around it. I'll make you pay for impersonating my family. Empty threats, little Tsutsu. After all, you can't even find me, can you? Obviously not, you're drunk like a skunk, and on the job too. What would your father think? As Tsunade prepared to launch herself at the mocking voice once more, Naruto interrupted. A bachan? That really is your grandma and ghost lady, that wasn't very funny. Mito neatly reappeared beside Naruto, looking around at the destruction serenely. Naruto-kun, why did you have to, spoil my fun? She asked in a completely flat voice that had Naruto gaping at her incredulously. Though, to be entirely fair, she wasn't the only one gaping at her. Tsunade was staring at her motionlessly, transfixed. A few seconds later, she spoke wonderingly. My grandmother's a ghost? Mito shrugged her shoulders slightly. Hello, Tsutsu? Naruto interjected when Tsunade seemed to prepare to launch a volley of questions. Yeah. Though that's probably my fault, come think of it. Tsunade turned towards him, an imperious look on her face, and Naruto shivered. Towering over him, Tsunade spoke. Oh, brat. What happened a few minutes earlier, that never happened, get it? Naruto nodded frantically. And now talk, she said grimly. And Naruto talked. Halfway through the explanation, Tsunade had broken out more sake, locked the doors and dumped the unconscious Anbu outside as Mito sealed the room. The three were seated on the sofas that surrounded the Hokage desk, with Naruto and Mito on one side and Tsunade on the other. Tsunade was nursing a headache. So let me get this straight. You, she said pointing at Naruto, just managed to stumble onto an old scroll left by you, she pointed at Mito, that would select and prepare the next Uzumaki clan head, which managed to turn him into a full-blooded Uzumaki, and make you manifest in a corporeal semi-corporeal form. Speaking of which, she paused to stare at Mito intently. What exactly are you? Mito smiled. I was waiting for you to ask. It was a delightful piece of fuinjutsu, What I did was seal my conscience in the spiritual containment array in the seal, connected to a chakra host vampire seal. Tsunade gasped. But grandma, that's forbidden. Mito smirked. Only for the other shinobi. You know that we Uzumaki have always had a rather unhealthy amount of chakra. Shooting the disgruntled Tsunade an amused look, she continued to explain the method of revival she had used. So when a suitable candidate touched the seal, it extracts chakra from the person, which is channeled into two seals, one which is the Uzumaki Purification Morphing Seal which enhances the Uzumaki characteristics of the user, and a body template seal, which creates a solid chakra shell for the parasitic conscience, which is, in this case, me. The seal contains another inbuilt purification morphing seal that is customized to my chakra, making it so that I can use my chakra in the host body. The chakra that enters the Uzumaki Purification Morphing Seal harmonizes with healing chakra stored in the chakra storage seal attached to it, and is injected back into the body via a chakra injection array. The combined chakra initiates a cascading reaction in the cells, causing them to undergo specific mutations to make it mimic the original Uzumaki stock. At the end of the explanation, Tsunade was looking rather awestruck. Naruto, on the other hand, looked nauseous. Don't say mutated. Why would you even do that anyway? Mito didn't even look fazed. So you would look like an Uzumaki, of course. We can't have an Uzumaki clan head that doesn't look like an Uzumaki, can we? At Naruto's outraged expression, Mito cracked. Sorry, you're just too easy to tease. Really, your body has to contain the proper template for it to produce Uzumaki chakra of your own. What you expressed at the end was the chakra converted by the scroll. By now your body's producing its own. Naruto's retort was cut off by the sound-off laughter. Turning towards the sound, Naruto saw Tsunade laughing her guts out. Ha ha! So that's why you're wearing a turban. Slipping from her seat, she was in front of Naruto in an instant, prying fingers reaching for the headdress. Come on, brat, let's see that nice shiny red hair of yours. Naruto scowled, squirming to get away from Tsunade, who was now petting his hair, marveling its newly acquired silkiness. Mito smiled. It was good to see them play. Naruto slowly dragged himself to training ground number 7, obviously rather hesitant about meeting his team. He had ditched the turban at the Hokage Tower. Mito ghosted behind him with an obviously worried expression. The reason for this was the subject of their discussion. So that's why I've been feeling a little less, well, full lately. Well, Naruto-kun, as a chakra construct, I'm like a summoned creature, you know. I don't generate chakra on my own because I'm not a part of the natural order. Instead, whenever I expend chakra, I recover it from your own reserves. Considering your chakra control, I'll say that it will be like keeping 100 Kage Bunshin active at all times when I'm not in combat. Anyway, that's why you fainted in the clearing after spearing me through. It automatically diverted your reserves to heal my chakra shell, which stretched your already strained chakra network too far, you know. Seeing Naruto's contemplative look, she continued hesitantly. If you want, you know, I could just teach you the basics as soon as possible, and then you can disconnect me. You could probably learn what you need to know from the scrolls sealed in the large scroll. You don't need me for that. Naruto abruptly stopped walking, staring at her with an unreadable expression on his face. Do you want to go? Because I won't tell you to stay with me if you don't want to. If you want, you can go and catch up with Bachan some more. You probably have lots to talk about. Meet you in the afternoon, Mito-sama. Now, with a definitely stony look on his face, Naruto turned to go meet his team. Wait, Naruto-kun. He paused at the shout, turning to look at a transparent Mito who looked at the edge of tears. I didn't mean that, you know. She pleaded imploringly. I mean, I know having me here is probably inconvenient for you, and I'm sucking your chakra dry, and you probably don't want me hanging around you anyway. Her rambling was interrupted when a soft missile crashed into her, grabbing her in a tight hug. His face pressed into the crook of her neck as he held on tightly, as Mito's form darkened in a blush. I've never had family before, and I'm not letting you just leave, ghost lady. He whispered in a gruff voice as he squeezed her further into his embrace. It's like you told me. Uzumaki never leave anyone behind. So give it up already, you aren't getting rid of me that easy. Mito held the shaking teen to her, stunned. Had what she had just said been misconstrued as a rejection? For such a brash personality, he was turning out to be very vulnerable. Was this what Konoha had done to him? She instinctively found herself staring into the Hokage monument in the distance. Hashirama-kun, what have they done to your dream? Bending slightly, she looped her own hands around him, whispering in his ear. Naruto-kun. Naruto stiffened as her breath hit his ear. You're never going to be alone, ever again. The child merely burrowed further into her embrace. For the first time in her life since the destruction of Izushiyogakure, she began to have uncharitable thoughts about Konoha. How could a village do this to one of their own, especially over a burden forced on him at birth? How could they have the nerve to do this to an Uzumaki, when they still wore a bloodied spiral in penance? A child so young, so alone. With a slight shiver, she realized that she was partially to blame. Kyuubi was something she had introduced to Konoha, after all. In a way, Naruto was her legacy, even more than the Uzumaki heritage. She then thought of Kushina, that small girl who had asked her if she could really hold Kyuubi's rage within her. Tsutsu had given her details of Kushina's death and the Kyuubi attack after their visit. Apparently, even as Hokage, she needed to adjust Naruto's security clearance before she was allowed to tell him. Thinking back to the visage of the teary-eyed girl, she found herself wondering. Kushina-chan, what would you have done if you saw this? Looking down at the shaking boy, she found herself burying her own face in his silky crimson hair. Never alone, she repeated, not if I can help it, I promise. And she intended to keep her promise. She just wasn't quite sure if she was promising it to Naruto or to herself. The wooden bridge near the number 7 training ground was peaceful. A gentle breeze was flowing through the trees, the small stream gently wove through the rocks, and a simpering pink-haired Kunoichi was eye-raping her disgruntled crush. A normal meeting for the dysfunctional Gen in Team 7. Said Kunoichi was, as earlier stated, sporting bright pink hair. Her Hitai used to tie up her hair. She was wearing a red dress with a marking depicting a white circle on her back. Her crush, on the other hand, sported a high-collared blue shirt paired with a pair of white shorts. He was also sporting raven hair that stuck out at the back, a pair of swirling half-developed Sharingan, and his customary frown. So far the day had gone to routine. Sakura had come early, waited for her beloved Sasuke to come, then squealed out a greeting. The Avenger had responded with the ever-expressive HN, after which he proceeded to sit in his customary brooding pose while Sakura pasted googly eyes in his direction. Now that the two main actors had come onto the stage, at least according to Sakura's mind, it was time for the supporting cast. Of the two remaining missing people, the first to arrive would be a blonde in a horrendous jumpsuit, who would proceed to greet Sakura, get insulted in return, then insult Sasuke only to get beaten up by Sakura. This would culminate in one genin holding his head and whining, one brooding, and the last alternately hissing at the first and fawning over the second until their extremely tardy sensei would arrive in the wake of a bad excuse. Only today, something was different. It had already been an hour since Sasuke had arrived, but there was no sign of the blonde knucklehead. Not that Sakura minded it at all. Not having him around meant that she had more time to watch Sasuke-kun. Not that she wasn't going to hit the idiot when he finally showed his face, though. She frowned. He was probably getting late on purpose because of Sasuke, she thought, looking at the genius in question who was staring into the distance, glaring even more than was usual for him. He had only been released from the hospital yesterday, and this meeting had been called to reacquaint them with team tactics. At least that was Kakashi-sensei had said when she had asked. Speaking of which, where were they? Kakashi-sensei she wouldn't expect for another hour, but Naruto? A deep frown on her face, and equipped with tightened fist, she waited for her teammate to arrive. And she waited. And waited. And waited some more. Almost all of the allocated hour had passed before she spied a figure strolling along the footpath leading to the bridge. The person was apparently holding a very engaging conversation, judging by the earnest hand gestures he made, but to her confusion she couldn't see who he was conversing with. Then, to her confusion, the figure suddenly spun around before apparently trying to hug air. There is someone invisible. Sasuke's monotonous voice cut into Sakura's thoughts. I can see its chakra, but the Sharingan can't see through whatever genjutsu they're using. The boy had straightened from his slouch, crimson Sharingan glaring in the direction of the intruders. There was a look of immense frustration on his face. He obviously did not like the fact that something could be hidden from his Sharingan. After the rather strange-looking hug, the figure waved at the invisible figure before slowly shambling towards them, his hands casually stuck inside the pockets of his orange jumpsuit. Naruto! With a war cry, Sakura leapt towards her absentee teammate. She fully expected to meet Naruto's skull, which she would proceed to drive to the ground. Which was why she was surprised when her fist instead met a steady forearm, bringing her charge to an abrupt halt. She looked up, meeting Naruto's face to berate him for daring to be almost late for the team meeting, only to do a double take. Naruto? At her bewildered tone, Sasuke looked up in apparent interest. HN. You look even stupider with that hair, dope. He sneered, which caused Sakura to smirk herself. Yeah, Naruto baka. You look even more stupid than you were earlier. Naruto could feel his blood pumping in his ears as he fought to control his blind rage. He had gone into the meeting hoping for an amicable split, however it was evident it was not to be. He found that strangely, he did not mind. Somewhere in his realignment of priorities something had changed his perspective as far as his team was concerned. Before they were friends that had scorned him, subject of his anger, and a cause of disappointment to him. Now they were, in his eyes, a group that had taken advantage of his emotional dependence on them to use him as a convenient outlet for their frustrations. The very thought brought a white-hot haze to his thoughts. If there was thing he absolutely hated, it was being used as a scapegoat. His thoughts were clearer than before, his mind slipping into that sharp equilibrium, that strange calm that he had only achieved in the middle of battle, when fighting for his life. Now, as far as he was concerned, they were the outside, the enemy. And even if his combat skills may have been lacking, Naruto knew how to fight. He had been doing that since he was born. And right now, he had to hurt them verbally enough so that one of them initiated a physical bout. His chakra was beating a tattoo against his body, eager to form chains that he knew instinctively that he could form. Naruto ignored Sakura's comments as he stared into Sasuke's eyes, which shifted to Sharingan and challenge. At the sight of the Jujutsu, his chakra surged in frenzy, yearning to break through the surface in sudden murderous intent. He then smirked derisively. I'll ask for your opinion when you can defeat your brother team. Sasuke went into a murderous rage, as he yelled and dove at Naruto, a snarl on his lips and a kunai in his hand, only to get pulled back by his collar as a hand clamped down on it. The man to whom the hand belonged was tall, with a shock of silver hair that leaned to his left. It was encircled by a slanted hitai that covered his left eye, and he was wearing a flak jacket and the official Konoha Jounin uniform. Hatake Kakashi had arrived. Let go. Sasuke-kun, calm down. Now Naruto, that was a little excessive, was it not? He said mildly, not looking up from his ever-present Ika. Naruto stiffened, before shrugging dismissively. He started it. Why you? Sasuke. Kakashi barked out. Sasuke subsided, still glowering at an unrepentant Naruto. Sakura was still shell-shocked at the exchange that had taken place, but at hearing Sasuke's yell she gathered herself. Don't talk to Sasuke-kun like that, Naruto baka. With a yell, she attempted to hammer Naruto to the ground, only to be stopped again when Naruto sidestepped it. As Sakura stumbled off balance, she was steadied by a hand on her wrist, before it was jerked backwards, making her spin around to come face to face with the livid Naruto. Harino-san. He hissed at the surprised Kunoichi's face. I would prefer if you didn't attempt to physically assault me again. Understood? Sakura nodded dumbly. The change of hair color and complexion had changed Naruto's looks drastically. With the blood-red locks draping his cheekbones and framing his pale, bloodless face, combined with his brilliant piercing blue eyes, Naruto suddenly looked 10 years older. Sniffing dismissively, Naruto turned towards Kakashi, whose one visible eye had widened considerably during the exchange between Naruto and Sakura. Closing his book and dropping it into his supply pouch, he looked at Naruto, his eyes widening a bit more when he saw Naruto's face. Naruto, stand down, or I'll have to report you for insubordination. Naruto's eyes met Kakashi's, and his smirk grew wider. Jounin-sensei Hatake Kakashi-san, he started using the formal title in lieu of the more commonly used Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi looked positively startled. Even Sasuke had stopped his struggling at the surprise of hearing Naruto speak in a formal tone. I regret to inform you that I shall be unable to participate in this exercise. Naruto's grin was positively malicious now, as Kakashi opened his mouth to berate him. Time to spring the trap, he thought, thinking back to the plan they had hatched in the Hokage tower between him, Tsunade and Mito. He straightened up his expression to deliver the message. By order of the Godame Hokage Senju Tsunade, I, Genin Uzumaki Naruto, Shinobi ID 012607, have been relieved of duties in the Genin Team 7 due to impending clan matters, as pursuant to the Section E of the 34th chapter of the Konoha Charter. Bowing slightly towards a stupefied Kakashi, he dug into his pouch, and producing a gold leaf-embroidered scroll that was used for official orders from the Hokage tower, he handed it to Kakashi. Absent-mindedly opening the scroll, Kakashi asked, "Clan matters?" Sasuke scoffed, interrupting the conversation. You clan? However much you lie, you're still a clanless loser. Turning to Kakashi, he added, Come on, Kakashi. Naruto scowled when he noticed Kakashi ignore the insult. Throw away that scroll and let's get a mission over with. I need to train. Besides, the dobe probably found the scroll in the trash. Shut up, Uchiha. Don't infest the air of the others with your vile tongue. Naruto was about to continue, when he was interrupted by Sakura, who spoke in a wondering tone. Section E of the 34th chapter, but that's the premature inauguration of Clan Head Clause, of the Clan Extinction Act. Then she gave Naruto a scathing look. Now you've done it, Naruto Baka. At least read the charter before you try to quote it. Baka. That only applies to clan heirs. When Tsunade-sama hears you impersonated her. Kakashi interrupted her in turn, his voice almost a whisper, yet carrying in the tense air that had traces of killing intent aimed at Sakura from Naruto. This is a valid document. Sakura's jaw dropped. If that was true, surely she would have heard of an Uzumaki clan in Konoha? Not to mention that Naruto was a clanless orphan. Everyone knew that. However, Kakashi continued, this clause requires the clan in question have an interim clan head with a blood relation to the clan in question? Naruto pointed at the scroll. It's signed by Bachan. She's of Uzumaki stock, 2 generations removed, via her grandmother Uzumaki Mito, who became Senju Mito, wife of the Shodame. Cool, ain't it? Kakashi was looking annoyed and rather taken aback, while Sasuke was frowning fiercely and Sakura looked totally lost. Sasuke's expression, however, was the one that Naruto savored the most, since Bachan had told him of the cause. Apparently the lack of non-Uchiha containing Uchiha blood owing to the rather fanatic pruning done by the clan meant that Sasuke himself could not ascend to the title of clan head without the abdication of Uchiha Itachi, who even with his missing nin status still was the recognized clan heir. I think this is done. Bachan wants you to report to her office to discuss replacements. He turned to walk away. By the way, Kakashi-sensei, he paused at the edge of the clearing, my father would have been ashamed at the way you treated me after all he's done for you. His last view of the remnants of Team 7 before he disappeared into the forest were of Sakura and Sasuke staring at him with a mixture of confusion and anger, while Kakashi simply stared at him, his one eye wide open in shock. Naruto walked into his apartment, completely exhausted. Entering through the window, he proceeded to stumble towards the battered couch before he sank into it with a groan. He barely stirred when a voice floated from his kitchen. Tough day? He merely gave a groan in answer. Tsutsu said she'll come over tonight. He grunted, only for a spatula to fly into his face from the open kitchen door. It was followed by a faux angry voice, Don't grunt like an Uchiha. Leave me be, ghost lady. Now that won't do, you know, said a figure framing the kitchen door, holding a ladle. Get your sorry carcass out here and eat. Naruto groaned again, before ducking suddenly as a ladle flew past where his head would have been. Raising his head warily over the backrest, he saw one of the more bizarre sights he had seen in his life as a resident of a ninja village. A translucent person, dressed in a translucent kimono, over which a very solid-looking flowery apron, which he recognized as a gag gift he had gotten from was tied. He probably would have broken out in giggles, if not for the fact that ladle that had been thrown still vibrated in the wall behind him. Its handle sunk a good foot into the mortar of the wall. Repressing an involuntary shiver, Naruto wearily staggered out of the sofa and into the kitchen, where a bowl of steaming ramen was waiting for him. With a content sigh, he sank into his seat and began slowly lapping at the noodles. Then Mito came up to the table, removing the apron before she took a seat opposite him, watching him eat. After a while, the insistent stare became too much for Naruto. "What do you want?" Mito gave a sad smile. "It's a strange feeling, isn't it?" Naruto blinked at the apparent non sequitur. At his puzzled face, Mito elaborated. "To let go of them, I mean." "What do you mean?" Naruto's brusque reply did nothing to change Mito's expression, and for some reason it grated on Naruto's nerves. "I mean that it's obvious that the team split didn't happen exactly the way you wanted it to." Naruto's head, which had been nodding nearer and nearer to the ramen bowl, jerked upwards at that comment. A startled whisper broke through his lips. "How did you know?" Mito met his eyes, a shadow of a grin gracing her face. "Really? You stumble into the apartment hours after you were supposed to, looking like you're dead on your feet and covered in wood chips, and you ask me how I know?" As Naruto groaned, mortified, Mito slowly placed a hand on his shoulder. "Look at me, Naruto-kun," she whispered to him. Naruto hesitantly leaned into Mito's hand, looking at her, looking lost. Slowly, she got up from her seat, only to plop into a seat beside Naruto and pull the boy into a hug. "Come on, Naruto-kun," she coaxed, "tell me what troubles you, and don't leave out what you did to those poor trees." As the evening wore on, she managed to gradually pry the story from Naruto. "So, do you think I was too harsh on them?" Naruto asked, sprawled on the chair, cuddling up to her. She had soon found that Naruto had an affinity for physical displays of affection. Probably from the relative isolation he had suffered during his childhood, she thought. Anyway, she had to concentrate on his words. Naruto seemed very fragile emotionally, and what she said now could possibly have many results. "Well," she started, wetting her lips, "if you had asked it out of context, I probably would have said yes." Naruto flinched at that. "However, with how they have treated you and how they continue to treat you," she continued, stressing the point of the continuing belittling he had endured even during the short exchange that had taken place, "I have to say they deserved it." Giving Naruto a fond smile, she got up from her seat. "Come along, Naruto-kun, as much fun as it was to rail at those fools, you don't want to be late." "Huh?" She had to conceal a smile at that. "Don't you want to learn how to wield those chains of yours?" Kakashi walked to the Hokage tower in a daze. Having dismissed his team, what remained of his team, he reminded himself bitterly. Early, he was going to meet Tsunade-sama to get some answers. In Konoha, removing a genin from their genin team was unusual. This was because of the principle of teamwork, which was one of the first things beaten into the heads of prospective shinobi, made compulsory in one of the first orders at the start of the Sandame's first reign. In Konoha, a genin team was family. They ate together, they camped together, and they killed together. A genin team was a mesh of personalities, with each member knowing the inner workings of the other's mind. This was why most teams stuck together even after the promotions of the genin members. This was also why it was considered almost heresy to even consider removing a genin from a genin team. Removing a genin without the consent of the jounin leader, however, was unheard of. Now, Kakashi knew that his team was quite a bit less than solid, when compared to the other genin teams out there. However, he had been getting there. Naruto tended to think things through a bit more and did not complain as much when he was delegated to the brute force parts of the missions. Sasuke was getting increasingly cooperative, and Sakura was getting serious, he supposed? Anyway, Naruto had quit at the worst possible point for the team, and what he said prior to quitting had not helped. Sakura was still looking a bit stunned when he had dismissed them, while Sasuke, when he snapped out of his own shock, would surely end up on a murderous rampage. And him? He was still digesting the caustic words that Naruto had spit back at him before leaving the clearing. And he had definitely heard the hint of disappointment and accusation in his tone, and it ate at him in a way it had not done in a long time. Maybe he was going soft. Not to mention the fact that Naruto seemed to actually know his pedigree. Of course, Tsunade-sama might have told him, but why now? So engrossed in figuring out his own thoughts was he, that he didn't even notice the fact he was nearing the Hokage tower until he had already crossed the threshold. So he was a bit surprised when he was hurriedly ushered into the Hokage office, past a crew of Chunin and what looked like Mokuton no Tenzo. Entering the office found Kakashi hurriedly stripped of his daydreaming. The office was a mess, with several parts of the wooden office looking newly grown. There were uncleared wood chips scattered around the floor, and an annoyed, completely sober Hokage trying to stare a hole through his head. Already this was not how he had envisioned the meeting going. Kakashi quailed uneasily as Tsunade's stare did not let up. Tsunade-sama, maybe I can come back later? Slowly, oh so slowly, Tsunade's stony face faded into a predatory smirk that looked petrifying on the kunoichi. Kakashi slowly edged backwards. Ah, there you are, Kakashi-san. You're early for once, how unexpected. Kakashi giggled nervously. The road of life had a shortcut? Tsunade sighed. Sit down, Kakashi-san. We need to talk about your team. Kakashi took the seat absently brushing off debris, before he started talking. Excuse me, Tsunade-sama, but don't you think that Naruto's removal from Team 7 is rather sudden? Of course it is, but that was intended, Tsunade said, steepling her fingers in front of her as she leaned forward on her desk. Somehow, that slight movement seemed almost threatening. It gives those old fogies on the council less reason to try to persuade me to change my mind, and she shot Kakashi an indecipherable look. It gets him away from an abusive team, as soon as possible. As Kakashi half rose from his seat in protest, Tsunade snapped at him. All of you were abusive to him, and don't you dare try to deny it. Letting out a calming breath, she continued picking apart the sensei of Team 7. Let me ask you a simple question, Kakashi-san. You've had Naruto in the team for almost 7 months. What exactly have you taught him? Kakashi stuttered at the blunt question. I taught him chakra control exercises, and teamwork exercises, and… Tsunade talked over his stuttering, cutting him off. Any actual techniques? Well, no, but his basics were too bad for him to learn. Not mentioning the fact that he learned an A-rank jutsu, the Rasengan, within a week? Impossible. He doesn't have the chakra control. I should have known you wouldn't even know. What about taijutsu? His bases are all off balance, he overextends on every other punch, and his technique is so bad that most of his blows have most of their power leached off by the time they make contact. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. Indeed? And have you ever told him that, or at least attempted to correct it? If I may interrupt, Tsunade-sama, I told him to practice his kata. What else do you expect me to do? If he wasn't motivated to improve himself, am I supposed to ditch the students who are actually willing to learn for a student who couldn't be bothered to learn when he should? I told him to polish off his basics, while I taught the others to survive. It wasn't like he was going to die anyway, with that healing factor. He could afford to wait until he catches up, and I can't allow the others to suffer for it. Here he was cut off abruptly by a spike of killing intent. Suddenly it was difficult to move as an enormous chakra presence slammed into his senses like a sledgehammer. The air around Tsunade was starting to get hazy. She looked absolutely livid. Pressing both of her palms onto the table, she leaned over the table, glaring at a paralyzed Kakashi. When she spoke, every word she bit out seemed like a malediction. You miserable excuse for a human! Do you willingly ignore what goes around you, or are you really that blind? Her long fingernails grooves in the wooden desk, her fingers twitching, as if expressing the desire to close around Kakashi's neck. Naruto lacks basics for one very simple reason, one that even an oblivious simpleton should understand. Tell me, Kakashi-san, did you really think your sensei's son, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, would not be subject to sabotage, when you yourself were a part of his guard patrols once? Seeing Kakashi start, Tsunade scoffed. Do you know how I knew that? Naruto told me that. He recognized you from the scent the first time you called a team meeting. I imagine you didn't even know that he had enhanced senses, did you? Taking his silence as the answer, she continued, imagine when he found out that the man that had rescued him from an assassination when he was 5 could turn out to be just as judgmental and narrow-minded as the rest of them? It took him a long time to stop believing in you, you know. Every time you rejected him for that clearly unbalanced Uchiha, he just came back, thinking that it would be different the next time. He's just stubborn that way, I suppose, but you know what happens when stubborn people lose hope? They break. And understand this, Kakashi-san, I will not let him break. She left her seat, pacing around the office. Kakashi didn't even dare to breath. The killing intent had not faded at all. Let me make this very clear, Kakashi-san, she enunciated, clearly trying to keep hold of her temper. I think of Naruto as a grandson, and by blood relation, I can declare it so. I came back to this place that seems to have taken a collective dump on my grandfather's dreams since I left, because of him. A leaderless Konoha is not being invaded by IWA right now because of him, and the rebuilding of the damaged sectors are going so fast because of Wave Country's support, which we have because of him, as is the fact that this place is not covered in sand right now by a rampaging Jinchuriki. That is, of course, not considering the fact that he is the heir to a clan that sacrificed themselves for this place, and the personal sacrifice both he and his parents have made to Konoha. She scoffed, leaning in front of Kakashi's chair to get in his face. And the fact that the ungrateful bastards that call this place home, including those that the family entrusted with his protection, all shun him, disgusts me. I don't know how he doesn't hate this place yet. I certainly would, if I had lived his life. However, seeing as he doesn't just want to get out of this dump, I can't remove him from it, however much I would like to. I'm not Sarutobi-sensei, Kakashi-san. I'm not old, and I have not grown tired. I will not let things slide just because the resultant hornet's nest is too troublesome to handle. And so far, the first thing I have noticed is the village-wide disregard for an order of a Hokage, and as long as I sit on this blasted chair, that I will not allow. Observing Kakashi with a critical eye, she sneered. Look at yourself, Kakashi-san. A supposed borderline S-rank ninja, cowering like a genin. I was out of active duty for almost 15 years, yet you, the 27-year-old, are the one who has gone to seed. At your age, Tsukumo could match Sarutobi-sensei's killing intent. Kakashi tried to speak, when the killing intent spiked yet again, and Kakashi was left gasping for breath. Tsunade didn't even seem to notice the effort, however the office was now rippling as Tsunade's earth-natured chakra tried to alter the wooden floor, and waves of chakra were crashing against the walls, saturating the room in a heat haze of chakra. Anyway, we seem to have strayed from the topic, haven't we? As his Jounin-sensei, however useless you might have been as one, I suppose you deserve to at least hear what is going to happen to your ex-genin. Because be certain, as long as I am Hokage, he will never be your direct subordinate again. Kakashi drooped in his chair at the announcement. Naruto unlocked his Uzumaki bloodline yesterday. She continued. The process involved has resulted in some cosmetic changes, as you might have noticed? Kakashi nodded dumbly. Even though the killing intent was slowly petering off, he still felt like prey in the mouth of a predator. Tsunade slowly circled back to her seat and sat down, never once taking her eyes off of Kakashi. This is the reason that precipitated the removal of Naruto from the team, but make no mistake, it was going to happen anyway. Your actions have also prompted me to start an overall investigation of the genin teams of Konoha. We can't have them all slacking off, can we? As for your team, Team 7 is being formally dissolved. But Tsunade-sama. Come now, Kakashi-san. Did you really expect me to keep you in command after the fiasco you seem to have made? Sakura will be inducted into the medical corps while Sasuke will be officially registered as your apprentice if you want, since you seem hell-bent on only teaching him anyway. Finally, you will need to attend Naruto's Ascension of Clan Head ceremony, as all available Jounin do, at the council gathering in 2 months' time. You're dismissed. Yes, they are quite beautiful, don't you think? Yen Naruto breathed, spellbound, looking up at the two wraith-like oriental dragons entwining around themselves as they climbed ever higher into the air, climbing, dipping, undulating in an entrancing display of beauty. This was only enhanced by the light of the dying sun, which the dragons were being exposed to, making the dragons glow in the colors of the rainbow, sparkling like crystal. You know, some people's expressions change mid-life. My father's did, after my sisters died in an ambush by the Uchiha clan. He used to have scrolls, before his rage caused him to express chains. Mito observed, also staring at the brilliant chakra constructs issuing from her hands. You know, you can tell much about the character of an Uzumaki by the type of expression shown. What do you mean? Well, our chakra expressions vary with our personalities, and each expression has different uses. For example, my illusionary dragons are incorporeal, but they can be used to transfer contact genjutsu as you saw in my little scuffle with the ANBU. Mito had the grace to blush a little. They usually express in people with calm and attentive personalities, and they usually have rather low chakra levels for Uzumaki, but they exhibit good chakra control. She pointed at Naruto. Your spike chain's expression on the other hand is corporeal, and rather more chakra intensive. They can be utilized in barriers, as flails and whips, and be used to channel battle fuinjutsu. My brother used to channel explosive tags, she chuckled. Whenever he stepped into a battlefield the whole area was full of potholes by the end. Your mother's chakra chains, on the other hand, were saturated with her Jinchuriki seal. That gave it chakra suppression abilities. Anyway, this is a warrior's expression. It shows in people with loud tempers and louder personalities. Hey! Naruto mock protested. Mito giggled. My mother, on the hand, expressed shadow tendrils, which is actually one of the rarest expressions around. It gave her a complete understanding of all chakra sources around her, and the ability to completely suppress her own chakra. She could even channel healing chakra through them. It expressed in people with a sensitive, romantic nature. And before you ask, yes, my mother was a sap for romance, wouldn't stop whenever Hashirama came over on clan business. Naruto stifled a giggle at Mito's expression. Who knew family members were such fun? Slightly scowling, Mito continued. Now the sealing scripts, which was my father's original expression, was a scholar's and sealing expert's expression. It would channel raw chakra, making it invaluable for sealers, and it could be used to form instant seals in midair. It was expressed in people of a studious nature. Slowly, she let the chakra dragons fade. As the iridescent dragons slowly faded upwards, Mito turned towards Naruto, slowly leading him towards a rock formation near the clearing. Sit down. Huh. The first step in accessing your expression is to calm your spirit, Mito said, serenely settling into Saiza, facing Naruto. Looking somewhat bemused, Naruto followed suit. Now close your eyes. Naruto hesitantly closed his eyes, only for the world to seemingly burst open a few moments later. Reflexively, he threw his eyes open as he yelled out in shock, only to see Mito's amused face looking back at him. What was that? He asked hesitantly. Your first experience in being a true Uzumaki, Mito stated, elaborating when Naruto stared at her. The Uzumaki are a clan that shares a close bond with chakra, much more than other ninja. And people, especially ninja, do not like being deprived of their sight. Therefore, when a shinobi meditates, they begin to gain a slight sense of their surroundings from chakra sensing. It is simply much more acute in an Uzumaki. When Naruto regained his posture, Mito spoke again. We'll have to adapt you chakra sensing later. For now, keep your eyes open, and slowly, try to match your breath with your heartbeat. Come on, short breaths, continuously. Loob. Dub. Inhale. Loob. Dub. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Slowly, he could feel his body relax, his muscles uncoiling, and in the background he began to feel a rhythmic pulsing, which was strangely out of beat. Mito's hypnotic voice washed over him. Can you feel another pulsing? Yes, he whispered back, afraid to disrupt this moment. It felt somehow important that he not break this calm. Good. That is your chakra. Now slowly, chorus that pulse to match your body's beat, start giving it a steady push/pull. And so he slowly began teasing the pulse, slowing it down, speeding it up, until its beat matched his heartbeat and his breathing. Ghost lady, I did it, he said, his own voice sounding strange to his ears. Good. Now, while concentrating on balancing the beats, tell me about the fight in the invasion. You know, the one you said Gaara tried to kill you in? As Naruto described his fight, he found that strangely his emotions didn't seem to be expressed. It was as if there was an abyss separating him from the outside world, and it was widening. When he was getting to the parts where the action had been thickened, his voice began to get drowned, buried under the surging blood pounding through his veins, his quickening breath and the roar of chakra as it rushed in his coils. His surroundings began to get replaced, and suddenly he was back in the clearing in the forest, with a huge clawed hand made of sand was descending towards him. He was frozen, his chakra rushing past his ears. Then, with a feeling like a sudden vacuum, he felt as if his body was extending, and then his body was cocooned in a cage of 3 crisscross spiked chains that were glowing a bright gold. Well done, Naruto-kun. Mito's voice cut through Naruto's panic. The world cleared, and he found himself sitting in Saiza, with his chakra chains still forming a cage around him. There was only one difference. Mito was sitting in front of him, one chakra dragon sprouting from her extended hand to bury into his chest. His eyes widened in realization. You put me in a genjutsu. Mito gave him a toothy grin that looked extremely out of place on her face. If it works, you know, she said nonchalantly. Naruto stared at her unrepentant face incredulously, before the humor of the situation sank in, along with the exhilaration of truly bringing his Kekkai Genkai out. Then a giggle escaped his lips, then a guffaw, before laughter was ringing across the secluded grounds. Mito looked at Naruto, who was now leaning back on his hands, laughing as the 3 spiked chains were wagging behind him, mimicking golden tails. Slowly getting up, she held out a hand for Naruto. Come along, Naruto-kun. How about I teach you the first exercise we had to do to control the chains, back in Yuzu? Mito proposed, as Naruto took the proffered hand, still giggling, with his chains hovering around him. And what would that be? Mito gave a cheeky grin. It's called the chain waltz. Want to learn how to make your chains dance? Naruto bowed playfully. Lead the way, madam. Night had fallen, and 4 figures were crouched on the treetops. Shall we? A rough male voice inquired impatiently. Yeah. What the fuck are you waiting for, shithead? A female voice hissed. Quiet. A soft male voice declared. We do not appear until Sasuke-sama is alone, that was Orochimaru-sama's orders. Just then, A rustling sound was heard as a tall ninja with a headband over one eye strolled out of the house under watch, before shining away. Sasuke smiled, the black tattoo of the curse mark racing down his torso. Sound 4, move out. A frantic knocking roused a sleeping Naruto. Hey Naruto, get up! Huh! What was Shikamaru doing at his apartment? Rolling out of the couch, which was his temporary bed, he sleepily stumbled to his door. Upon opening it, Shikamaru almost tumbled into his apartment, before he started at Naruto's hair. Troublesome. Naruto grinned sleepily. Sorry Shika, long story. I'll tell you another time. Shikamaru raised an eyebrow. I don't want to know, you troublesome person, he grumbled. Anyway, get ready, mission, 1 hour, North Gate. Naruto simply stared at him confusedly. What do you mean? I'm on training leave. Shikamaru palmed his face, exasperated. Troublesome. Sasuke left the village yesterday. What? And apparently the village is still short-handed after the invasion, so Tsunade-sama told me to pick a team to go after them, and to take you. At that, Naruto's mind began to work, shrugging off the last remnants of sleep. Why had Bachan told Shikamaru to specifically get him? After a moment, he got his answer. Ghost Lady. Seeing as she couldn't spare any higher-class shinobi, it was obvious she wanted another safety net for the mission. Alright, I'll be there. Who are the others in the team? Shikamaru shrugged. Well, I was thinking of Chuji, and Kiba, and maybe Hinata or Niji. What about Bushibrow? Lee? He's still in the hospital. Naruto thought about the group. Take the bun girl, I think her name is Tenten. We're going to need a sniper. All of us are close range other than you, he said finally. Shikamaru nodded absently. I'll ask Niji to tell her. Come with me to ask the others? Naruto shook his head. No, I've got some things to figure out. Meet you at the gate. He turned to go back inside. Shikamaru sighed. Troublesome. Turning back with a lazy wave, and Naruto, do something to your hair. I don't want everyone gaping at it during the mission. You just don't want the chatter, you lazy bum. Naruto replied. Troublesome. As soon as Shikamaru had left, Naruto was cursing up a storm in the kitchen, until he was interrupted by a sleepy female voice. Naruto-kun, shut up before I kill you! Naruto yelled back. Ghost Lady, get up! Bachan needs you! A sleepy mumble answered him, and Naruto's sweat dropped. Who knew that the courtly Mito-sama was emphatically not an early riser? Repeated tries yielding only various versions of go away and assorted death threats, Naruto finally, in sheer desperation, did the one thing that would wake up any shinobi. Ghost Lady! Code Red! There was a muted expletive from her room, before a series of thuds were heard. Finally, a disgruntled Mito opened the door and stepped out cautiously, one hand on her hair buns grabbing a saban she had used to pin up her hair. The door, Naruto realized with a shiver, was totally covered in saban to the point it looked like a hedgehog. Seriously, how many saban did she hide in her hair? Mito was growling in irritation as she analyzed the situation and found no imminent threat. With an incensed look on her face, she stalked towards a cringing Naruto, jabbing a finger to his chest. You never do that for a prank. Naruto waved his hands frantically, trying to pacify her. Sorry, but it really was an emergency and you were not waking up, and if you make me late Bachan's going to kill me, and Shika's going to suspect, and we're going to be late, Dadabayo. By now Mito was completely confused. Slow down, Naruto-kun. What's happened, and for what would we be late? Naruto scowled. The team left the village last night, and Bachan told Shika to get me. I think she wants to be available as backup. Apparently no other Chunin or Jonin could be spared. Mito scoffed. Uchiha. All of that blasted clan think they're God's own gift to the world. And now, what with that massacre you told me about, I think the total number of Uchiha in the village is 0. Yup. That's why the village is in such a tiffy. Apparently the last Uchiha is too valuable to go missing. He scoffed bitterly. Personally speaking, if the bastard was stupid enough to abandon Konoha for the guy who killed the old man, he deserves a slow death. Mito laid a calming hand on his shoulder. Why would you think it's Orochimaru he's run off to? Where else would he go? The snake freak pretty much gave him an invitation at the Forest of Death, and he knows he's too weak to kill his brother right now, what with Itachi putting him to a coma the last time they met. Feeling the emotions flowing off the young redhead, Mito awkwardly asked, Naruto-kun, what are you going to do when you find him? Naruto's scowl deepened. I'm going to give him exactly one chance to surrender, before I deal with him as any deserter would be. Execution. The finality in his tone shocked Mito before she realized the true cause for Naruto's bitterness. Seeing the whole village praise the young Uchiha while shunning him must have been harder for him than even he realized. It was just not a case of loyalty, or even revenge, with Naruto anymore, though those factors undoubtedly contributed. No, this had a streak of jealousy, of possessiveness, all over it. Having yearned for what Sasuke had effortlessly got had left Naruto incapable of calmly dealing with the fact that Sasuke had spurned it. Mito turned to prepare for the morning. I'm going to meet with Tsutsu before the mission, and just to be clear, I won't interfere unless anyone's in mortal danger. In battle, my chakra use could interfere with your chakra unfavorably. Naruto, who was searching for his kunai pouch, nodded absently. Sure, see you at the gate, ghost lady. And when we get there, communicate with the Uzushio hand signs I taught you yesterday. We don't want your classmates to know of me unless it's absolutely necessary. At the north gate, a curious group of genin was gathering. Kiba was glaring at Niji, together with Akamaru who was growling. Tenten was polishing a kunai, and Chuji was calmly eating chips. Shikamaru had his head in his hands. A short distance away, invisible to the group, Mito was calmly perched on a nearby branch watching the group of genin. That troublesome Naruto, if we get late then Tsunade-sama is going to punish me. Yeah. What's the deal? We don't need that guy. Kiba interrupted. Shooting a glare at Niji, who continued to ignore him, he added, and on top of that, Shikamaru, why do we need this jerk? Hinata would have been much better. Akamaru barked in agreement. Shikamaru sighed. Troublesome. Hinata is still not cleared for strenuous missions by Tsunade-sama, and Niji here has the strongest Byakugan in all the genin of the clan. He cracked a small grin. Besides, Naruto recommended both Niji and Tenten. Huh! Tenten had been distracted from polishing the kunai by Shikamaru's remark. That blonde-orange midget? Kiba snickered at her description. I've never even met the guy. Why would he recommend me? Cause your shuriken jutsu is awesome, Databeo. A loud voice behind them caused all of them to turn around to face the figure coming up the road towards them, even as Tenten blushed at the comment. As the figure came closer, several pairs of eyes widened in disbelief. Annoying verbal tick? Check. Glaring orange jumpsuit? Check. Whisker markings? Check. Blonde hair? Cheha? With a moan, Shikamaru face-bombed. Troublesome. Naruto, I told you to cover your head. Naruto just grinned. And not see your faces? No thanks. Niji chose that particular moment to enter the conversation. Naruto-san, he asked in a monotone, why is your hair dyed red? Naruto rubbed his head sheepishly, taking the chance to do a few obscure hand signs behind his head. He was immediately tapped thrice on the shoulder. From Shikamaru's narrowed eyes, Naruto thought he probably didn't miss it. So much for obscurity. It's a long story, Databeo. Kiba snorted. Knowing you, you probably fell into a vat of paint daub, he said dismissively. Naruto reared up at the insult. You want to go, dog boy? Shikamaru got up. Everybody shut up. The group all went silent. Even the gate guards were looking at them interestedly. After all, it wasn't often that you saw that most lazy species, the male Nara, raise their voice. Shikamaru sighed. Troublesome. Looking at the group, he mentally decided the formation. All right, this mission is to retrieve Sasuke from what is speculated to be shinobi of sound. From what is known, he went willingly. The group's reactions were varied at this particular revelation, Shikamaru noticed. The most expressive were Kiba's, whose cursing and the growls of Akamaru let everyone know exactly what they thought. The ones least fazed were Niji, and to Shikamaru's surprise, Naruto, who simply gritted his teeth. So it seems he isn't surprised that Sasuke went to sound, but I never told him that, he thought, interesting. We will set off towards the northern borders with Rice Country, where hidden sound is rumored to be. Kiba looked up. You and Akamaru take point. You are going to on the lookout for any scent trails of either Sasuke or the sound shinobi. I assume you know the terrain? Kiba puffed up his chest. Piece of cake. My mum used to take us tracking in these woods. I know them like the back of my hand. Net Akamaru? A series of barks answered him. Shikamaru continued, ignoring Kiba's exuberance. I will be immediately behind Kiba, because I'm the team leader, and I will take the front. Tenten-san will be immediately behind me, because she is the sniper. Any objections? Everybody shook their heads. Naruto will cover the left, and he will stay to the left of the main formation, near the center. In case of an attack, you will distract the enemy using your Hokage Bunshin. Naruto looked at him, uncomprehending. But before Shikamaru could elaborate, Naruto straightened up. Got it. Stay to the left between you and Tenten-chan. Why didn't you just say so? Shikamaru narrowed his eyes in suspicion, before he let out a long-suffering sigh. Troublesome, he muttered under his breath, not taking his eyes off Naruto. Something strange was going on, and though this was his first time leading, he already knew that he didn't like it when his team had secrets. Right, he drawled, before looking at Chuji. Chuji, you take the same position as Naruto, but to the right. You will be the finisher of the team. You only engage when there is a clear target. Chuji simply nodded, still munching a chip. Shikamaru turned to Niji. Niji-san, you are our rear guard. You take position behind Tenten-san, and I need you to do a full Byakugan scan over the area, every 5 minutes. If that is possible? He asked Niji. Niji nodded somewhat indignantly, as if Shikamaru had called his expertise into question. Shikamaru took a deep breath. All right then, let's move out. Just as they were about to take to the trees, a yell came from behind them. Wait! What? Shikamaru whined as they were delayed again. The person turned out to be a teary Sakura followed by a clearly reluctant Ino, which gave Shikamaru the beginnings of a headache. It only worsened when Sakura spotted Naruto. Instantly changing her demeanor, she marched up to him, a fisted hand reared back to punch him. Naruto! How dare you show your face? Sasuke left because of you, you dope! The team was staring at Sakura, unsure as to what they should do. Naruto, Shikamaru noticed, had gone very still. Sakura seemingly saw it as well, for she froze in her attempt to punch Naruto. A faint pulse of killing intent issued from Naruto, blanketing the surrounding as he tilted his head, studying Sakura intently. Bluish wisps of chakra were emanating from his body, and Shikamaru's attention was drawn to the faint reddish tint it had taken, until he saw Naruto's face. Naruto's face was drawn to an expression that Shikamaru would have sworn a month ago would never be present on Naruto's face, especially towards Sakura, his presumed crush. The malicious smirk on his face, combined with the red hair, Shikamaru had never before noticed just how much like fresh blood it looked, dripping down his face in a lanky curtain. It gave Naruto a chilling resemblance to a homicidal Gaara. Why, Sakura, do you think your boyfriend running away had anything to do with me? He took a step towards Sakura and she instinctively stepped back. Shikamaru's hands were halfway into the sign for Kagemain no Jutsu before he remembered himself. Surely it would not come to blows. Naruto's face twisted in amusement, though his lengthening fingernails gave lie to his expression. Though it is possible that he only stayed in Konoha because he wanted to be with me. How wonderful! I had a fangirl and didn't even know it. Don't you think it's a pity, Shikamaru? Naruto, he said warningly, ready to step in. Naruto gave him a dismissive glance. Cool down, Shika. This is just a little union between ex-teammates, isn't it, Sakura-chan? Sakura swallowed. Naruto's smirk widened to the extent that it looked toothy, canines glinting. Now, Sakura. No need to act so scared. I'm sure you weren't going to hit me now, were you? Good, you can learn after all. What a surprise. Now, as for your little boyfriend, he left the village, and unless he has a very good excuse, he is a traitor to the village. And do you know Konoha's policy towards traitors, Sakura? Of course you do, what with that huge brain of yours, don't you? If he resists capture, and if I know Sasuke he will be killed. I'll probably do it myself. He wouldn't be the first traitor I've dealt with. After Mizuki-sensei, Sasuke won't be a problem. Ignoring the other's gasps, Naruto leaned into Sakura's horrified face, eyes tinged with red. So if you want to see your dear Sasuke-kun alive again, my dear Sakura-chan, you'd better pray your pretty little head off that he listens to reason. He turned his back to Sakura, who was now shaking. Personally, I doubt it. With his last statement hanging around the gathered shinobi like a death knell, he leapt towards the tree line and out of the gate. You guys coming? With a sigh and an apologetic look towards Ino, Shikamaru gave the signal and the Sasuke retrieval team leapt towards the trees, leaving a shocked Ino and a terrified Sakura standing in the middle of the road. Half an hour into the sprint, Kiba had found the trails of Sasuke and the sound shinobi, right up until the scent of Sasuke had disappeared. Figuring Sasuke was simply being carried by the sound shinobi, though he did not know the reason, Shikamaru had ordered the team to trail the scent of the sound shinobi. They had met a team of wounded patrolling jounin along the way, Rado and Genmai if Shikamaru's memory served, and both had met and been defeated by the sound. According to their report, the group had consisted of 4 sound jounin, who had all shifted to what they had described as a monster form. One had carried a barrel of sorts that they said was covered in seals, which Shikamaru guessed was where they kept Sasuke. However, a reason for doing so eluded him. Shikamaru sighed. He really hated this sort of situations, where critical information was missing. Of course, this was not the only thing bothering him. His team was uneasy. Even Kiba, who was notorious for being chatty during missions, was keeping quiet, only speaking when necessary and casting wary glances at a still fuming Naruto. Unease was hanging around the team like a blanket, and Naruto's continuing ill temper was beginning to wear upon them. Shikamaru had to admit that the scene at the North Gate had intimidated even him a little. Naruto had always been that somewhat stupid, clumsy show-off that no one took seriously. Never had he seen Naruto so intimidating. At the gate Naruto had looked almost feral. Maru-san. Shikamaru-san. Shikamaru looked at Niji, who had been the one who had called. Yes, Niji-san? Niji had his Byakugan active. 4 targets directly ahead, carrying a sealed barrel that the Byakugan cannot penetrate. 500 meters, targets appear to be resting. Everyone stop. At Shikamaru's command, everyone dropped out of the trees to the forest below. What is it, Shika? Naruto's voice was terse. Shikamaru merely pointed the ground about a foot in front of Kiba, where a thin ninja wire-like substance was just visible in the sunlight. Kiba winced. Traps? There's even more in the branches, it's a complete web up there. Tenten looked at Niji. Can't your eyes see them? Niji grimaced. Probably if I was doing a 128 palms. Otherwise they're too thin. In the Hyuga clan, probably only Hayashi-sama and the elders have Byakugan that are strong enough to see this normally. Shikamaru considered their options. From the complexity of the webbing, it was highly unlikely that he could get the whole team through without snagging at least one wire, which would render a sneak attack useless. On the contrary, barreling through would only lead them to an ambush. The only possible option was, say Naruto. Exactly how many clones can you make? For the first time since the incident, Naruto grinned. Shikamaru suddenly felt a vague sense of doom. Exactly how impossible was Naruto going to be this time? The Sound Four were resting from the battle with the Jounin and their release of the cursed seals. In the middle of their circle was the barrel containing Sasuke. It was slightly smoking. Hey fatty! How much longer till the Uchiha is ready? Jirabu, the one who was addressed, looked at the speaker and sighed. Tayuya, a girl shouldn't talk that way. Tayuya tossed her pink hair over her shoulder in irritation. And what are you going to do about it, fat ass? Jirabu simply sighed, when the third member of their group suddenly sat up. What's up, Kidamaru? Jirabu asked, before noticing that Kidamaru was smirking. The Konoha trash is smarter than I thought, he observed with an excited gleam in his eyes. This is going to be an exciting game. Suddenly the clearing was disturbed as the fourth member of the team dropped down into the clearing. Sakan was quite obviously disturbed. We've got to go, now. We're being surrounded. Tayuya smirked. Why, you afraid of clones? Konoha doesn't have enough manpower to surround us, birdbrain. Kidamaru interrupted, looking quite excited. They're all disturbing my web. They're all solid clones. I want to fight that one. He continued, we can't even tell where the real ones are. This is going to be a good game. Sakan sighed. We're not here to fight trash, Kidamaru. Remember, Orochimaru-sama needs us as soon as possible. I'm getting hungry, I could stay behind? Jirabu suggested. Suddenly, the once still head poking out of the neck of Sakan spoke. Listen to my little brother here, we've got to go now. A feral shout interrupted them. It's too late for that, sound bastards. From all sides of the clearing, an avalanche of Naruto descended, intent on burying the Sound Four under a mountain of clones. In an instant, Kidamaru had held his 6 hands above him, while Jirabu had lifted the barrel and Tayuya and Sakan had shifted into defensive positions beside Jirabu. Spider bind. A whitish web of spider webbing issued from Kidamaru's hands, repelling the incoming clones. Moments later all the clones disappeared in puffs of smoke, obscuring the area in chakra smoke. A quiet voice rang out in the confusion. Kagemain no Jutsu, complete. Instantly, the Sound Four found themselves stuck in place, unable to move. Gutsuga. With a yell, Kiba and Akamaru launched themselves at the barrel in Jirabu's hands. Meanwhile, in the opposite end of the battle, Naruto was hiding in the bushes. Ghost Lady, do you really think this is a good idea? Mito nodded somberly. You've been more emotional lately, haven't you? Naruto nodded, puzzled. What does that have to do with this? Your seal's adjusting to your body's changes, so it's going to a bit unstable for some time. That's why I told you to remove yourself from the direct line of sight, you know. If anything even grazes you, it gives the fox an opening to push its own chakra into your body, And we don't need to stress your body on top of everything else. Seeing Naruto's mutinous face, she continued hastily. Look, Naruto-kun, the Nara told you to distract the enemy, you know, and in that position you don't need to be in the formation. In fact, it would be detrimental to do so. Naruto nodded, deflated. It still feels like hiding, he grumbled, absently creating another batch of clones to run interference. Think of it this way. If they run into trouble, they have a trump card even they don't know about. Kidamaru hastily used his spider sticky gold ability to form Tonfa, which he used to deflect a hail of kunai coming at him from the bun-haired girl. It had only taken them pulsing the first stage of their curse seals to break free of the spiky-haired boy's jutsu, after which the fight had turned into a free-for-all. Looking around, he saw Jirobo playing around with the Inuzuka and his dog, still carrying the barrel. Taiyuya was simply using taijutsu, bobbing and weaving around the shadow user and the fat boy while Sakan was being attacked by the Hyuga. Numerous copies of the blonde boy were flitting around the battles, mostly providing distractions for the Konoha team. None of them were any real threat, however they were numerous and rather slippery, making them a pain to fight unless they went all out. Looking at the others, he saw that all of them had reached the same conclusion, even Taiyuya, who would have normally opposed the decision. What with her inability to accept defeat, they couldn't activate their curse seals now, or they would be in no shape to deliver the Uchiha to Orochimaru. This left only one alternative. Nodding to Taiyuya, he ducked beneath a flying mace and dispelled a clone with a punch before firing off a jutsu. Spider sticking spit. The tough ropey net catching Tenten by surprise, she hardly had time to do more than cross her arms in front of her before she was brutally pulled from her tree perch and into an off-guard Niji. At the same time, Taiyuya had caught both Shikamaru and Shuji by their wrists, proceeding to sling them both into the already unbalanced group in front of them. Hey fat ass, now! With a grunt of exertion, Jirobo caught the incoming Getsuga in his palms, before grounding them. While Kiba and the others were just shaking off their shock, he slammed his palms to the ground. Doton, Dorodoma! With a crumbling sound, curved earth walls grew around the group, trapping the group in a giant dome of stone and earth. Jirobo grinned, throwing the barrel to Kidamaru with one hand, the other on the dome. Chakra glowed in the space between his hand and the earth dome. You go on. I'm hungry, I'll just drain some chakra from this trash before joining up. Kidamaru gave him a questioning look. Are you sure? One rat escaped, after all. Jirobo shrugged, uninterested. If that Konoha trash is stupid enough to show his face, I'll kill him too. Or better yet, eat his chakra, he seems to have a lot. Naruto watched, unsettled, as the Sound 4 easily routed the Konoha team's strategy with brute strength. But that was not the worst. Naruto, that dome is sucking chakra out of its prisoners. Naruto racked his brains for a solution. On one hand, staying meant that he would let the Sound 4 out of sight, which he was loath to do. On the other, he wasn't sure that the others had enough brute force to overpower the dome. Right. Ghost Lady, you track down the other Sound Shinobi and leave a trail for me to follow. I'll take this glutton out. Mito turned to him, surprised. But Naruto just gave her a look, before stepping out of his hiding place. The first notice Jirobo had of his new opponent was a speeding golden chain rushing towards his hands. Upon his hasty retreat, however, the chains abruptly changed direction and headed for the Earth Dome, shattering it like glass to reveal his bewildered teammates. Nobody even flinched when the clone that had been pretending to be him dispelled in a burst of smoke, being preoccupied with staring at Naruto. Oi Shika! Take the others and go, I'll get back to you! Naruto shouted, ignoring the gawping of the Konoha team. Jirobo slowly flexed his arms, the first stage of the cursed seal rippling across his skin. You aren't going anywhere, Konoha trash. Two more chakra chains rippled out of Naruto's arms in reply. Without taking his eyes off of Jirobo, he spoke, Shika, go now before the fight begins. I can handle myself. With a yell, Jirobo lifted up a piece of the very earth's surface above his head, looking like a drawing of Atlas. Doton, Dorio Dango! He bit out through his exertion, levering himself to throw it at them. With a slight nod towards Naruto, Shikamaru and the rest of the team fled the clearing just as Naruto's chains speared through the enormous boulder in a deafening crash. Mito flitted across the treetops of the forests of the Hai no Kuni, following the three Sound Ninja as they ran for the Ta no Kuni border. Traveling as close as she dared to the spider-like shinobi, she thought his name was Kidamaru. She was urgently trying to decipher the seals on the barrel. However, her mind was not in it. She was pondering the enigma that was the cursed seal. Mito, in all of her sealing mastery and experience, had never seen such an effusion of chakra as that emitting from the small seal that was branded on all of the Sound 4, and in an entirely academic way, she was fascinated by it. A seal with a chakra source of its own was somewhat unbelievable. Seals could not manufacture chakra, only store it. Not to mention that the seal stank to her acute senses of corrupted chakra, but she could see that it wasn't containing a demon, or even the chakra of one. If it was, the rate of chakra seepage through the seal would have meant that the potency of its flow would visibly reduce. No. What she was looking at right now was something alien to her knowledge, something totally in the realm of the unknown. But the possibility for a seal to actually create chakra intrigued her, seducing her with its possibilities. After all, if she could adapt it to her own matrix, she would be free from the chakra leash tying her abilities to Naruto-kun's. She was interrupted from her thoughts by the mutterings between the sound shinobi. Birdbrain. Tayuya needled Sakan, who looked torn between amused and angry at the constant insults uttered by the only kunoichi in the group. Why are we moving so slowly? Waiting for the fat ass to catch up? No. We're just conserving our energy for if we run across any more patrols. We want to be able to fight our way out. We wouldn't need to bother if we crawl like this, Tayuya mumbled. If you shitheads don't fucking pick your pace up, Orochimaru-sama will probably give us to Manda. Seeing Kidamaru snicker, she turned on him. What are you laughing at, you spindly arsehole? I don't care if you want to be fucking snake bait. If you don't fucking move faster, I'm taking that bloody barrel and getting out of here. Mito, listening to the conversation, was getting increasingly worried. According to her senses, the Konoha team was at least 5 minutes away, and from what Tsunade had told her, there was no patrols that were likely to meet this group. If they accelerated now, they would probably get away without any further interruption. She couldn't allow that. However, she didn't want to use jutsu either, what with the chakra drained to Naruto in a potentially hostile situation. Her choices were taken out of her hands immediately afterwards. Sakan was nodding. All right. We'll go first level of the curse seal until the border. Tayuya, Kidamaru, can you handle that? Kidamaru frowned. I can, I guess. But I really wanted to play with that clone spawning Konoha. That would have been a boss battle. Tayuya smirked, the markings of her curse seal already spreading through her body. Of course I can handle that. Who did you think I was, birdbrain you? Mito sighed, hoping she didn't do anything to seriously endanger Naruto. Snapping through a few deliberate hand seals, she intoned, Genjutsu, net of tranquility. Shikamaru was troubled as he led the team, sans Naruto, across the forests and trail of the sound shinobi and Sasuke. At their rear they could still make out the signs of Naruto fighting with that behemoth of a shinobi. Naruto. Shikamaru had always thought him a bit of a mystery, with his inexplicable friendship with the Sandaime Hokage. However, during this mission it had seemingly come to a head. Naruto was proving more and more of an enigma the more the mission progressed, and it didn't make Shikamaru any less wary of the blonde-turned-redhead. Shikamaru had noticed when Naruto had substituted with one of the numerous Kage bunshin that he had flooded the landscape with. The rather well-executed substitution had not really irked him. It would have been folly to expose the original. Moreover, he had been more than slightly stunned by then. Being a technique derived from the Nara clan's Kuroi bunshin, Shikamaru knew the limitations of the solid clone technique. For Naruto to use it to create possibly 1,000 clones, without even looking winded, meant that he had chakra reserves beyond belief. Shikamaru doubted that even the Sandaime Hokage, jutsu powerhouse that he was, could have spawned as many. But he knew that his erstwhile partner in skipping academy lectures had rather unbelievable reserves. No, what had truly troubled the spiky-haired Chunin was the strange mood swings that Naruto had exhibited, and he had not forgotten the strangely colored chakra that Naruto had emitted during his altercation with Sakura. Suddenly, the surrounding was rocked by a giant explosion. A giant cloud of dust erupted from behind them, before an unearthly scream was heard. Reflexively looking back along with the others, even Niji, he saw a sight that made his stomach turn. In the light of the noonday sun, glinting in the sunlight, 3 of the strange chain-like chakra constructs that Naruto had employed earlier rose into the sky, weaving around each other. And speared at the top of it, with chains piercing through his head, heart, and stomach, lay the undoubtedly dead body of Jirabu. Shikamaru thought it may have been the sun, but for a moment, the chains had seemed more red than the gold they had been before. Drip. 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 A figure was lying prone on the ground in the middle of an enormous crater. It was a boy, wearing the tattered remnants of a jumpsuit, and he was covered in blood, none of which were his. The boy was also, to his complete surprise, not dead. Speaking of not dying, that was close. Naruto thought as he finally recovered his equilibrium enough to open his eyes. What in the 9 hells happened anyway? His shocked eyes observed the pillar of chakra chains protruding from his stomach rather clinically, as if it was simply an amusing artifact, until with yet another drip, a drop of viscous liquid fell onto his face, when he absently wiped it away, his hand stained a dark, unclean red. Looking up, his gaze slid along the chains, which had curious crimson veins in them, to the top, where his stomach turned in disgust. The dead body of Jiraiya was hanging there, held up by 3 of his spiked chains piercing his body, one through the head, one through the heart, and the other through the stomach. The stomach was torn open and his eyes wide open in a terrified stare. Curiously, blackish blood was pouring through the chains from various gaping wounds, dripping to the ground around him. How had he gotten here? Flashback. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Stay still, Konoha trash. Why, so you can punch me? No thanks. 3 chakra chains curved around Jiraba's still figure, attacking, spearing at him from opposite sides. Jiraiya twisted around, avoiding the coordinated attacks of the chakra chains while trying to find the real Naruto, who kept out of his reach. Fine. You want to play it that way? Arhat fist, pressure palm. With a resounding crash, Jiraiya struck the ground with an open palm, creating a minor earthquake that managed to dispel most of the clones. However, in the next second he had to vacate his position as Naruto's spiked chains veered into him. Jiraiya grimaced, running forward again to engage his ever-elusive target. I'm getting fed up with you, midget. Naruto cracked a grin. So what are you going to do about it? Reaching down, Jiraiya clenched his hands on the ground. Doton, Doryo Dango. Before Naruto could puncture the giant boulder like before, it was flying towards him. Hastily crossing his arms before him, Naruto intoned, spiked chains, barrier. The 3 chains rearranged themselves into a web-patterned shield. When the rock smashed into the barrier, though, it held for about a second before the sheer bulk of the projectile overwhelmed it. The giant boulder crashed into the place where Naruto had been, with a resounding crash. Then a puff of chakra smoke erupted from the ruins of the boulder, and Naruto raced from behind Jiraiya, holding a swirling ball of chakra. Rasengan! Jiraiya hastily turned towards him, flipping through hand seals. Doton, Dora Kageshi. A slab of stone hinged up from the ground, shielding Jiraiya, only to be bored through by the Rasengan. However, when he drilled through the earth slab, his torso came into contact with Jiraiya's knee. Arhat fist, rising knee. The Naruto burst into smoke, revealing it to be yet another Kage Bunshin, just as another spiked chain whipped into Jiraiya. Jiraiya jumped back, increasing the distance between him and Naruto. Abandoning his attempts to get closer to Naruto and settling into a stance. Curse Seal Level 2, activate. Jiraiya started to morph, his hair extended, his skin colored, and warts started to appear on his face. Naruto looked on, intrigued. Wow! You got even uglier than before. With a roar, Jiraiya launched himself at Naruto. Arhat fist, rock attack. Naruto attempted to dance away from the attack like he had been doing during the whole fight, only to find that Jiraiya's transformation had not been entirely cosmetic. He had become exponentially faster. With a sickening crack, Jiraiya's fist buried itself into Naruto's chest. He could dimly hear his ribs break before he was flung backwards and into a tree. Struggling to breathe, he found himself vomiting blood, staining the torn remains of his jumpsuit. You're finished, little genin. Jiraiya scoffed, turning away. I'm Jiraiya of the South Gate. Did you really think a genin like you could beat me? Naruto's vision stained red as Kyuubi chakra erupted around his body. Jiraiya had just finished his fight with the annoying clone-spawning Maverick Genin. After all, no one could get back up from having their chest caved in. Even if the boy's ribs had not gone into his heart and pierced his lungs, the force would have liquefied some of the organs in his torso. What a waste, he idly thought as he walked back out of the clearing, slowly releasing his cursed seal. I could really have used his chakra. A red glow filled the area behind him, causing him to twist around in shock, only to have pain shoot across his body as crimson claws sliced across his torso. He looked up in disbelief, coming face to face with the creature that the genin that should have been dead had become. Crimson, viscous chakra was coiling around the redhead in coils as he crouched on all fours, growling at Jiraiya like an enraged beast. The whisker-like markings had thickened considerably, and his crimson eyes were glaring at him, suffused in killing intent. His 3 chakra chains were present behind him, swaying in a hypnotic rhythm. Jiraiya noticed that the previously golden chains had crimson veins traversing their length, while the base of the chain seemed to have been set on fire. Jiraiya's wounds hissed as they attempted to heal due to the influence of the curse seal, even as the possessed genin in front of him snarled at him, his whole body wrapped in an unnatural crimson glow. A moment passed, with the 2 transformed shinobi staring at each other across the clearing. Then, snarling at each other, they leapt at each other, intent to kill. Leaning back to avoid an uppercut from Jiraiya, Naruto slashed wildly at him with his claws, followed by his chains lunging at Jiraibu as he attempted to evade the rushing claws. Jiraibu managed to block the majority of the attacks with his increased speed, but the third spike chain, coming at him from behind, tore into his side as he dodged. Cursing fluently, Jiraibu immediately backtracked. "Who the hell are you?" he asked disbelievingly, receiving only a roar in reply before the beast-like genin tore towards him. Note to self, don't get too close to a person with a cursed seal, Naruto thought dazed, as he tried to get up from the punishing blow to his chest. It felt like he had been hit with a battering ram. He could distinctly feel that several of his ribs were outright broken, and he was having trouble breathing. Blood was filling his mouth, and he was somewhat sure that his lungs were punctured, or worse. The pain was excruciating. Why had he gotten so close to Jiraibu, and why hadn't he retreated when he had upgraded his cursed seal? Well, he could perhaps take solace in the fact that he wouldn't die from this, seeing as the fox wouldn't let him. The fox. Naruto could remember the hazy outline of a conversation he had had just before they parted. A nagging voice in his head was telling him that it was somehow important. What had she said? If anything even grazes you, it gives the fox an opening to push its own chakra into your body, and we don't need to stress your body on top of everything else. Oh. Shit. He could already feel an unnatural warmth spreading from his seal, chakra being released in an ever-increasing deluge that covered his body. His body, stressed out already from the Uzumaki molding, would not be in good enough shape to let him handle the power, even the paltry amount that he normally could. And he knew the seal was stressed. He had checked on it yesterday, and the cracks running along the length of the control rune at the center had not been reassuring. He would have had to strengthen the seal in about 3 years' time, based on the speed of decay. But with this latest complication, he would be lucky for it to last the mission. The acid-like chakra was racing along his chakra coils, scorching them and healing them at the same time as his body was glowing in the reddish glow of the chakra. He barely had time to look at the phenomenon, however, since in the next moment the chakra had reached his head. Rip, tear, hate, kill. His bones were popping, his body reassembling his mangled chest as he got into a crouch, snarling. But Naruto was not aware. No, Naruto was locked in his own mind, blinded by the extreme negative feelings that were running rampant throughout his mind courtesy of the Kyuubi. Disinterested in the current battle in favor of letting his mind survive the vicious assault, his mind retreated to itself, protecting itself from the rage of the Kyuubi that had never felt so terrible, so undiluted, so pure. So Naruto sat there, in the darkness, haplessly fighting to protect himself from the unnatural emotions as outside a beast raged, raining primordial destruction on the creature that had been monumentally stupid enough to anger it. Jiraibu, for the first time since his fight with Kimimaro, feared for his life. He had tried bashing boulders on the beast, he had tried pummeling it to death, and he had even once succeeded in capturing it in another Dorodoma. However, it was proving to be useless in stopping it, and it was proving to be nothing if not relentless in its attempts. It would simply regenerate from whatever wounds Jiraibu managed to inflict on it in a shorter time than Jiraibu took to inflict them in the first place, and the wounds it placed on him in return proved to especially immune to the cursed seal's healing. Not to mention that the one time he tried to absorb the beast's chakra in his Dorodoma, the chakra had scorched his chakra pathways and almost caused him to drop out of his cursed seal mode, only getting another slash across his shoulder for the trouble. Compounding his problems, the twinges of pain originating from his cursed seal were getting worse. He was running out of time. He was rudely interrupted when a chakra chain snagged his tunic, throwing off his balance, and making him stumble onto an equally surprised Naruto, who growled at him, even as Jiraibu tried to leap away. The ever-present chakra chain circled behind Jiraibu, the large lethal spikes aimed at his head as Jiraibu was in midair. When Jiraibu was milliseconds away from a gory death, however, Naruto seemingly went into shock. His crimson eyes dilated, the red slowly bleeding out as the chains disintegrated in midair. Naruto's body continued to spasm for a few seconds before going still. Jiraibu cautiously got up, staring at the boy. His cursed seal was troubling him, but he had been a worthy opponent, and he deserved to be dispatched as such. Concentrating what remained of the cursed seal's power to one hand, his body slowly leached of the cursed seal's influence except his hand, which was now wreathed in malevolent-looking purple chakra. Heh. I was hoping to use this on Kimimaro, he thought wryly as he prepared for a final attack. Arhat fist, palm of finality. As Jiraibu's chakra-wreathed palm neared his face, Naruto's eyes snapped open, clouded blue eyes staring at the approaching hand in confusion even as his body instinctively rolled away from the attack. Jiraibu stumbled at missing his mark, slamming his palm into the ground in an overwhelming explosion of shrapnel. Off balance, Jiraibu fell in a heap onto a seemingly unconscious Naruto, who was bleeding over his eye himself from the shrapnel from Jiraibu's latest attack. "Is old man," Naruto murmured. "What did you say, trash?" Jiraibu demanded belligerently, struggling to end Naruto's life as he lifted one bulky hand towards Naruto's throat. I said, "This is for the old man." 3 chains burst from Naruto's navel, shooting through Jirobo, killing him instantly as they punched through his body, carrying it into the air pinned onto the spiked edges. Naruto let out a relieved sigh. "I did it," he observed before he succumbed to exhaustion. End flashback. Groaning, Naruto pushed the corpse of Jirobo off his chains, letting it hit the ground in a spurt of blood as he struggled to get up, ignoring his protesting body. He had no time for this, not when the others were in danger. Struggling to his feet, he broke into a stumbling run onwards without a backwards glance at the bleeding corpse of his first real kill, disappearing into the forest following the discreet swirl markings left by Mito. Mito had to say she enjoyed the frustrated looks on the sound shinobi as they tried, and failed, to enter the initial curse seal stage. Of course, seeing as it was a quite elementary technique, she supposed the illusion would shatter soon. After all, if one managed to even nudge the curse seal awake, the resulting chakra infusion would tear away the rest of the illusion. Those fucking Konoha bastards must have done something, Tayuya muttered angrily as she continued to try to activate her curse seal while running. Sakon shrugged, only the minute twitch of his eyes giving away his unease. "It doesn't matter. We don't need the seals to take care of trash." Kadamaru grinned sharply. "This game is getting even more interesting," he crowed madly. "I hope Jirobo left some for me. I could use a good fight." Sakon looked ready to reprimand Sakon, when the trees behind them rustled due to a pursuing shinobi. Taking alert stances, they were relieved to find it was only Jirobo. Up in the trees behind them, Mito sighed in relief. Finally the Konoha team had caught up. It happened in an instant. Jirobo suddenly wrenched the barrel from Kadamaru's hands and jumped back as a pair of spinning blurs smashed into a surprised Sakon, launching them into the air and down a precipice. With a roar of rage, Kadamaru leapt at Shikamaru, who had transformed back, only to be blocked by a genin in white clothes and distinctive pupilless eyes, a Hyuga. Kadamaru sneered savagely at Niji. "A Hyuga? Are you that eager to die, trash?" Niji, not deigning him with a reply, simply settled into a Juken stance, activating his Byakugan. Meanwhile, Tenten was staring at the precipice down which Kiba, Akamaru, and the strange 2-headed shinobi had fallen. Muttering an expletive, she turned to Shikamaru, who was warily eyeing the female member of the Sound Four. "I'm going after Kiba." Shikamaru nodded tiredly, handing the barrel to Chuji. "This is so troublesome." Tayuya smirked condescendingly at Shikamaru. "You're going to fight me, you scrawny rat?" Shikamaru looked at her, eyes lidded. "You really like talking, don't you, troublesome woman?" Ignoring a steaming Tayuya, he turned to Chuji. "Chuji, get that barrel back to Konoha as soon as possible," he said seriously, wincing as Niji activated Kaiten to deflect some of Kadamaru's projectiles. Turning back to Tayuya, he ran off, eager to put some distance between them and the other fight. She ran after him, forming hand seals and snarling at him. "Don't you dare run, you rat! I'm going to fucking crush you so bad, they'll have to scrape you off to bury. Kuchios no Jutsu." Multiple puffs of smoke issued from behind her, causing Shikamaru to scowl. Of course I had to get the angry girl with the summons. Troublesome. The smoke dissipated, revealing 3 enormous and grotesque figures behind Tayuya. Shikamaru, losing his composure, gaped. "What the hell is that?" Tayuya gave him a predatory grin, her curse seal markings spreading over her body in jagged lines. "Curse seal level 1, activate. These are my doki, shithead. So, ready to die?" Chuji rushed back towards Konoha, stubbornly trying not to think of what Shikamaru and the others were facing, and failing miserably in the attempt. It had not escaped him that the original team formation that Shikamaru had banked on for their triumph over the team of higher-ranked Nin had been destroyed in the chaos of the splintered groups that were now fighting for their lives in the forest. Kiba taking on the apparent leader may have surprised him for a moment, but it was hardly a surprise. The Inuzuka had been spoiling for a fight ever since his loss to Naruto, and his rapid progress had probably pushed the thorn deeper, leading Kiba to do something daring in order to show Naruto who was the alpha of the pack. Shikamaru taking on Genjutsu user as the strategist and long-range attacker of the group was a no-brainer, though Chuji still felt nervous when he thought of Shikamaru facing the foul-mouthed redhead. And it was natural that as the team member possessing the best defense, Niji would engage the spider like Nin, who seemed capable of creating weapons at will. But Naruto, who had fought was fighting, he wouldn't lose hope the plump team member? If Naruto had not interfered, it would have been his fight, that much he knew. His techniques were the best possible matchup for Jirobo, so why had Shikamaru not ordered them to switch? With a faint sense of horror, Chuji realized that Shikamaru had made a tactical decision to leave Naruto to fend for himself. Naruto's presence had led to tensions within the team, and Naruto was strong enough to pose a threat to any of the Sound Four. And though Shikamaru would have denied it to his dying breath, Shikamaru would have been relieved to not send Chuji into danger and possible death. Shikamaru had considered Naruto the most expendable of the team, which was a sobering thought. Clenching his fist slightly, Chuji quickened his pace as he sprinted back to Konoha, conveniently backtracking to the first confrontation. After all, even with all the mystery surrounding Naruto lately, he was Chuji's friend. He only hoped it was not too late as he quickened his pace, clutching the barrel tightly. Behind him, invisible, Mito flitted through the treetops, keeping a lookout for any signs of Naruto. She was pretty sure that her decision to use a genjutsu on the Sound Nin had been warranted. After all, she still didn't fully understand the mechanics of the Cursed Seal. If it enhanced their physical abilities as she suspected, the Konoha team might have never caught up to them. Still, using lone chakra without prompting, while the donor was in a combat state, was no joke. Not to mention that she had felt the slightest whisper of the Kyuubi's vile scent in the chakra transmitted to her. The transference seal she had on him would normally filter out perceived impurities in the donor's chakra, but a caustic chakra like the Kyuubi's could still cause it to burn out. Which meant that Naruto, and by association her seal, had been subject to a strong dose of Kyuubi chakra recently. That was not reassuring. Still, the Akimichi boy, Chuji, was not moving in the direction of Konoha, which was to south-southeast of their location, but south, retracing their steps. This meant that he was going to check up on Naruto, and possibly team up with him before they retreated to Konoha. The bushes rustled slightly below, bringing her out of her reverie. Chuji seemed to have not heard it, but Mito saw one of his hands creeping towards his kunai chain. She smirked. That was nothing less than what she had expected from an Akimichi, who were notorious for their hunting abilities and forestry together with the Nara clan. Suddenly a group of small projectiles impacted the ground in front of Chuji, who immediately somersaulted above the projectiles, landing on a nearby branch facing his attacker. Chuji took out his kunai chain, draping it over his body as his opponent emerged from the bushes. It was a young man, looking to be in his late teens, with white hair dressed in a loose, long-sleeved shirt and black pants. He had a purple inverted bow similar to the other members of the Sound Four, and his green eyes took in the Konoha shinobi carrying the barrel superiorly, as if he was above dealing with him. But there was one thing Mito noticed with increasing unease. The boy had 2 red circular clan markings on his forehead, denoting him a member of the Kagaya clan. Looking intently at the projectiles aimed at Chuji, she noticed that they were bones, specifically digits of fingers. So they were facing a Shikatsu Miyaki user, a bone manipulator of the cursed clan of Kagaya clan of Mizu no Kuni. Mito could feel what little chakra she could manipulate in her body pulsing as she prepared to fight. Her body was getting ready to fight. She knew for certain that the young Akimichi of Naruto's class did not have a ghost of a chance against the Kagaya, especially one with a bloodline. The bloodthirsty nature of the clan was long documented. Even her brother Shin, who was famous for his love of battle, had hesitated entering the Kagaya lands. That, combined with their bloodline, had given the Kagaya clan a demonic reputation, with the civilian population of Mizu considering them advocates of the Shinigami. And now she was to fight one. The lack of fluctuations in Naruto's chakra meant that his particular fight was over, but that gave no specification on Naruto's condition. She did not even know if she could safely leech any more chakra from him without endangering his life. However, she could not allow Chuji to face this monster without backup, especially when handicapped by the large barrel. It looked like Chuji would be the first of Naruto's classmates to learn of her existence. Meanwhile, the white-haired Kagaya was talking to Chuji. His voice was a monotone, as if he was utterly uninterested in what he was saying. Hand over Sasuke-sama, trash. I do not have time to kill you now. Chuji tightened his grip on the barrel, and Mito saw the chakra flow in his arms become erratic. He was no doubt preparing for one of the multi-size techniques of his clan. You can go to hell. Call off your guard dogs and exit the land of fire, or be killed for trespass. The Kagaya's face twitched. Ah well. In that case, Konoha Genin, I am Kagaya Kimimaro, and I will be your executioner. Bones grew out of his palms, elbows, shoulders and knees in sharp, lethal-looking spikes. Dance of the Willow. Kiba rolled to a stop at the base of the cliff he had taken a dive into, finally stopping his momentum to come to a stop near Akamaru, who had regained his feet before Kiba. Said dog was growling at something behind him, so with a groan he stood up, only to find the figure of the sound shinobi he had tackled slowly getting up. Oh man, guess it was too much to ask for you to die in the fall? Kiba asked rhetorically as the strange two-headed man finally got up, glaring at him. You are going to pay for that, Konoha trash. He spat out, before the head facing backwards spoke. For once I agree, little brother. Trash like you should not attack their superiors if you don't want to die. Kiba scoffed. I don't know what sort of freak you are, you bastard, but you are going down. For legs technique, beast human clone. Akamaru turned into a clone of Kiba, who had gained animalistic characteristics of his own after the 4 legs technique. Priming themselves, the two jumped at the opposing shinobi, spinning like a pair of drills. Getsuga. The Getsuga tore through the stationary Sakan, but as Kiba turned back, he found 2 people where one had been before, completely unharmed with a black pattern on their skin, covering opposite halves of their bodies. Curse Seal Level 1, activate. What the hell? The pair simply smirked as they approached each other, before they, to Kiba's surprise, merged at the hip, leaving one person standing with 2 torsos. The strange figure leapt above him, landing behind the spinning Kiba before extending his leg in a roundhouse kick. Multiple connected feet. Solid feet materialized from the extended foot, repeatedly battering Kiba from behind, making him crash into the ground. Using his partner as a cover, Akamaru in his beast-human clone state spun above the fallen Kiba into Sakan's face. Sakan crossed his hands over his chest confidently as Yukon completely disappeared into him, intoning multiple connected fists from his crossed hands. Fists appeared, growing off each other, as they battered the incoming Akamaru with repeated punches. Akamaru flew away from barrage of fists, his transformation dispelling as he hit the ground with a yelp. Sakan scoffed. Did trash like you really think you could take me, Sakan of the West Gate, on by yourself? The head hanging from his neck chortled. Aren't you forgetting someone, little brother? My name is Yukon, Konoha Trash, and this is my brother Sakan. Remember the names, for they are the names of your killer. Kiba got up slowly, wiping a trail of blood from his mouth and smirking. Didn't the snake bastard tell you not to monologue in the middle of a fight? Now, Akamaru. Dynamic marking. The brothers settled into a defensive stance as Akamaru leapt up from behind Kiba, employing an elementary tsuga. However, instead of drilling towards them as Sakan expected, Akamaru instead made a wide overhead pass. A moment later, Sakan and Yukon were sprayed with a strong-smelling liquid, dousing them. Ugh, Sakan grimaced, did your dog just piss on me? Now I'm getting angry. I'm going to kill you! Kiba, who had used Sakan's momentary distraction to slip past them and beside Akamaru, spoke through a fit of giggles. Oh, I get it, you're pissed. Yukon growled at the pun, as Kiba sniggered, settling into a stance. Let's see you punch this. Human-beast combination transformation. Double-headed wolf. An enormous cloud of chakra smoke erupted around Kiba and Akamaru. Brother Yukon spoke warily, looking at the chakra cloud. Sakan nodded, and they went rigid. Curse Seal Level 2, activate. The smoke cleared, revealing a snarling, enormous twin-headed wolf standing where Kiba and Akamaru had been. Then one head snarled. Garoga! Sakan looked at Yukon in alarm as the giant wolf bore down on him. Then, in unison, they went through a series of hand seals. Summoning, Rashomon. With a cloud of chakra smoke, a sturdy gilded gate appeared between the transformed Inuzuka and their target. As they crouched behind the Rashomon gate, which was denting in the middle due to the force of the Garoga, they heard a strange hissing coming from around them. Looking around them in alarm, they saw 6 kunai surrounding them in a hexagon, each primed with an exploding tag. Then a female voice called out from behind them. Couldn't let you boys have all the fun now, could I? 6-pointed star. The world exploded around Sakan. You are the most troublesome girl I've ever fought with, Shikamaru noted with a moan as he jumped back to avoid an enormous fist of a doki which shattered the branch he was on. Tayuya cackled, playing on her flute. Really? What are you going to do about it, you fucking scrawny rat? Shikamaru didn't reply immediately, as he weaved between the doki to come between them and their mistress. But in a puppeteer like you, the human is the weak link. Kagemain no Jutsu, complete. A tendril of shadow attached itself to Tayuya's feet, coming from the opposite direction of the Chunin in question. Tayuya could only stare in frustration as the Shikamaru in front of him dissolved into smoke, a simple bunshin. Then suddenly, Tayuya was no longer there, and he was holding off the sharpened edge of the flute with a kunai. Tayuya had a feral grin on her face. Did you really think you could fool a genjutsu user with a bunshin, Konoha Trash? She taunted Shikamaru, using her superior physical strength to overpower him, the sharpened flute slowly digging into his neck. If a fucking scrawny rat like you is the fucking chunin in your fucking group, it's no wonder the Uchiha left your pathetic village. Seeing as your village isn't fucking strong enough to keep the good ninja, maybe you could have simply let him go. Now your scrawny ass and all your fucking friends are going to die. Shikamaru suddenly pushed her flute away, ducking under it to swipe at her legs with a kunai before tumbling backwards to avoid retaliation. Tayuya leapt up to avoid him, settling down on branch nearby before starting to play her flute again. Shikamaru hid in the undergrowth nearby, his hand dabbing at his neck, which was slowly dripping blood from a shallow, jagged cut from the flute. He could hear Tayuya's doki stumbling around the clearing, clearly searching for him as the haunting melody of the flute reverberated throughout the forest. Where are you, you fucking bastard? You think you can hide from me? Revolt of the demon world. Strange chakra constructs emerged from the mouths of the doki, translucent worm-like creatures with a multitude of gaping mouths. They were sniffing the surroundings to the tune of the flute, bobbing and weaving as they tried to smell out their prey. Give it up, Konoha trash, Tayuya's gloating voice came from the clearing. These spirits are made from spiritual energy. As long as your scrawny ass has any physical energy left, they're going to lead me right to you. Something strange was going on here, Chuji thought as he continued to dodge the spinning bone wielder with surprising ease. He had thought it would have been tougher than this, what with the guy's appearance. But the man seemed to always a hair too slow or too fast to hit him, and Chuji, as confident as he was about his own skills, knew that he would have been no match for his opponent if not for his seemingly random lapses in judgment. Not to mention that he was fighting while having to protect the barrel, whereas Kimimaro had no such restriction. However, he had seen flashes of what looked like stylized dragons around the bone wielder before he missed Chuji in a strike. Kimimaro seemed to be more upset than anyone else in the vicinity. He kept muttering about genjutsu, though Chuji could not see how that could be possible. After all, he was the only one fighting Kimimaro at all, and surely if there was a Konoha shinobi in the area they would help. However, Chuji was not one to ponder in the middle of battle. That was more Sheikah style. Instead, he pulled out his kunai chain. Multi-size technique, spiked human bullet tank. Kimimaro turned instinctively towards the threat, but was too late to stop the giant mass of kunai and flesh from rolling over him. Instead he tucked and rolled into a ball, before 3 feet long spikes grew out of the vertebrae in his back. There was no time to change course. Chuji would run into the man who rather resembled a porcupine at the moment, and he would run himself into the spikes. Then, suddenly, a ghostly woman in an aristocratic clan attire appeared before him, looking alarmed, even as a crimson-veined spiked chakra chain wound around him, redirecting his momentum into a nearby tree. A rough, feral voice called out from the treetops. You alright, Chuji, ghost lady? What the hell's going on here? Kiba had just made some headway with the giant summoned gate, when an enormous explosion ripped the gate apart. Blown back by the force and dazed, he was thankful that the gate was unsummoned following its destruction, or the debris might have torn him apart. He heard a whine, and looked down to see Akamaru, having reverted back to his normal form from the blast, lapping at a narrow trail of blood running down his flank courtesy of one of Yukon's earlier punches. Then he heard a sniggering female voice in front of him, which he was unable to identify due to the ringing in his ears and the acrid smoke in his nose. Akamaru whimpered again. It seemed he too had been affected by the noise of the explosion and the destruction of the gate. Kiba-san? Sorry about that, I guess? It's just I saw the perfect opportunity. Now he remembered where he had heard that particular voice. It was that bun-haired girl who had lost to that sand chick in the Chunin exam. Now he just had to figure out why she was here. Kiba-san? I said I'm sorry, now stop napping and come with me to help the others. Right. He was with the others, and they were on a mission to retrieve Sasuke. Why would he go after the team? Instinctively clutching at his forehead, Kiba stumbled to an upright position, gently depositing Akamaru inside the shredded remains of what had once been his favorite hoodie. It was after this that his eyes focused on the impatient Kunoichi in front of him. Tenten-san, isn't it? You were on the same team as that bastard Niji. What are you doing here? The Kunoichi frowned, before leaning into his face and peering at him. Huh? Are you in shock or something? Maybe this will help with that. She gave him a prompt cuff on the back of the head, spinning him around and into the nearby stream. Kiba came to, sputtering, as he pulled his face out of the stream. Why would you do that? He asked indignantly, as the girl giggled hysterically. You were in shock, she replied unrepentantly. Now come on, Niji has probably gotten in over his head already. Kiba stuttered. But. Oh, that? The guy we were fighting is probably in 1,000 pieces. I thought the stupid idiot would jump. I didn't even get a proper fight. Kiba looked at where she was pointing, and barely managed not to vomit. What remained in the crater could not be identified as human, or even something that was once alive. Burnt, shredded and crushed, it smoked in the crater, emanating the most disgusting stench of burnt flesh. Yeah, Kiba said weakly, turning away from the corpse. That guy's dead. Let's go. As they sprinted away to find a way back up the cliff, either saw the grim face of Yukon, peeking out from the back of Kiba's head. Niji skipped away from yet another golden projectile, almost lazily reaching out with a Juken strike to sever the spider thread attached to it as he landed in a crouch. At the other end of the clearing, Kidamaro grinned. "You're getting really interesting, Trash," he said, grinning as his spider sticky gold to form a set of boomerang-like weapons for each of his 6 hands. "Care to try closer?" Niji charged forward, as Kidamaro continued to send volley after volley of webbing at him. Each time the webbing close to snaring him, he would strike it with a precise Juken strike, dissolving the thread. Batting away his webbing at every turn, Niji slowly advanced even as Kidamaro retreated into the forest, spewing webbing from his hands. "Give it up, Sound Shinobi," Niji advised Kidamaro as he disentangled himself from yet another web. The two were within striking distance now. "You're within the range of my divination. 2 palms." Niji crossed the distance between them in an instant, driving 2 Juken strikes into Kidamaro's shoulders. Even as Kidamaro jerked back at the impact, Niji was continuing with the attack. 4 palms. 8 palms. 16 palms. 32 palms. Niji stepped into Kidamaro's face as he was flailing from the attack. 8 trigrams, 64 palms. Kidamaro was launched away from the branch they were on by the force of the last attack, but suddenly flipped away to land in a crouch on a low-hanging branch. He was grinning. Niji frowned. "Your willpower is commendable, Sound Shinobi, but you can't use chakra now. Give up, and your life will be spared." Kidamaro's mouth twisted into a mocking grin, even as Niji noticed a gold substance flake off from Kidamaro's body. "Guess your Byakugan isn't as all-seeing as you would like it to be, is it, Hyuga?" he mocked, before gesturing to the flakes falling off him. "This is my armor of sticky gold. It'll take more than you to put a scratch in my armor." Niji stared at Kidamaro blankly. "You do realize that you gave me a solid reason to use lethal force, don't you?" Kidamaro gave him a challenging grin. "Go on, be my guest. I like it when prey struggle." Niji sighed, jumping down to re-engage his opponent. "I swear, fate has a strange sense of humor. Why can't I get a normal opponent for once?" Chuji, now out of his multi-size technique and sporting a rather generous gash on his shoulder, looked nervously between the 3 shinobi that were staring at each other across the center of the clearing where the barrel containing Sasuke stood. The Sound Shinobi, Kimimaro, stood at one end, sharp bone spikes sticking out of his arms, legs, shoulders and spine, with a strange black pattern spreading through his body originating from the strange 3-line seal below his throat. His green eyes were flashing with irritation. At the other end was Naruto, only he looked a lot different, even when compared to the red-haired version that had come to the mission. His orange jumpsuit was in tatters, the top barely hanging on to the frame. His canines looked large, his unique whisker markings wider, giving him a feral look. His eyes looked bloody, the scarab bloodshot and curious crimson veins traversing the irises. Blackish half-clotted blood matted his hair in clumps, running down his clothes and the remains of his clothes. A blue-black bruise was clearly visible on his exposed chest, and 3 golden chains with strange crimson veins within them were protruding from his lower back. Between them, nearest to the barrel, stood the woman that Naruto had called Ghost Lady. Chuji could certainly see the reasoning. The woman looked like a colored glass figurine, the destroyed forest around them visible through her translucent body. Her hair, which seemed to be of a reddish shade, was pinned to her sides in 2 buns, somewhat reminiscent of Tintin's, only held up with multiple saban. She was wearing a white kimono, and she had a pair of seal tags in place of earrings. Also, now that the fight had been halted for a moment, she looked completely calm, in contrast to Naruto and Kimimaro who were flooding the surroundings with killing intent. For a moment, the 3 stared at each other. Then Kimimaro scoffed. "You Konoha shinobi are all very eager to die, more's the pity that I don't have the time. And you, woman? You were the one who kept trying to put me in a genjutsu, weren't you?" Mito snarled, at odds with her expressionless face. "I'm Mito of the Uzumaki clan, Kaguya." She spat at the Sound Shinobi, ignoring Chuji's gasp. "You don't need to tell us about your killing tendencies, we Uzumaki have faced it often enough. I would have thought that your clan would have done this world a favor and gone extinct by now, but of course that's too much to ask from your kind, isn't it, barbarian?" Kimimaro stared at her blankly. "I have no idea what you're talking about, woman. Now hand me over the barrel containing Sasuke-sama, so I can be on my way." Naruto took a stumbling step forward, gritting his teeth. "Now see here, Sound Trash. If you think we'll just allow a shinobi to defect to your bastard master," Kimimaro growled, "you're very much mistaken. Die." With a scream, Naruto swung his arm wildly, his chains arcing behind him in unison to crash into the place where Kimimaro was, even as Mito vanished into thin air again with a whisper of rapping oriental dragons. Suddenly, through the dust cloud caused by the chains colliding with the ground, a bone spear broke through. It was followed by Kimimaro, who had what looked like his own ribs jutting out of his body in a protective cocoon. You are an interesting opponent. May I know your name, Konoha-nin? Naruto paused in his charge, before a bloodthirsty grin crossed his face. Uzumaki Naruto. And yours? Kagaya Kimimaro. Now prepare to die for opposing Orochimaru-sama. Dance of the Larch. Your master's ambition is as useless as his hands have become. Prepare to die, Kagaya, for treading on lands protected by the Sandaime sacrifice. Kaga Bunshin. With a series of pops, close to 100 clones of Naruto appeared. However, all but the original lacked the chains waving behind him. Then the clones paired up, cupping their hands over the other for a moment before the forest was lit up with the blue glow of pure chakra, even as Kimimaro attacked the nearest clones in a pirouetting maneuver, cutting a swath of destruction through the multitude of clones. Rasengan! Kimimaro disappeared under the assault of the remaining clones, his bone spears cracking under the assault of the Rasengan, before Kimimaro's chakra pulsed with a yell. Curse Seal Level 2, activate! With a spin, all the clones surrounding Kimimaro were shaken off, revealing Kimimaro with a darkened skin and a dinosaur-like tail. Then, with the slightest shimmer of a serpentine silhouette, Mito attacked from behind him as Naruto's chains disappeared, only for Kimimaro to somersault over the approaching dragon into a group of Rasengan-wielding clones, which were abruptly dispelled by the bone spears as he spun in place, the needle-sharp bones digging into the clones and obscuring him in a cloud of chakra smoke. Synchronizing with a clone for a moment, Naruto created a Rasengan in his left hand as he materialized one chakra chain through his right arm, giving him a knife edge and several chakra edges throughout his arm. With a yell, he dived into the smoke after Kimimaro, who parried it with the bone emerging from above his palm, his other hand gripping Naruto's above the wrist, stopping the Rasengan from approaching him. With an ominous crack, the bones started to give way as both Naruto and Kimimaro tried to overpower each other. Hell, looks like your bones can break after all, what do you know? Jumping back at the exact moment that the bone dagger broke, Kimimaro reached for his shoulder as Naruto's Rasengan-wielding hand hit the ground with a deafening crunch. Kimimaro slowly pulled out a bone sword from his upper arm, molding it into a short bone sword before settling into a sword stance. Dance of the Camellia. Within a moment, he was within Naruto's guard, rattling him with repeated puncture wounds before one of his flailing chakra chains caught Kimimaro across the stomach, tossing him away. Naruto fell onto his knees, red chakra bubbling around his wounds for a moment as they hissed and steamed. Then, struggling to his feet, he walked towards Kimimaro, who had also gotten onto his feet, ignoring the blood as it flowed from the gash Naruto's chain had inflicted. Mito stood immobile in the clearing above Chuji, who seemed paralyzed by the raw killing intent filling the area, ready to interfere should it be necessary. But she was wary of chakra use so soon after Naruto had suffered an injury, particularly in the wake of clear use of the Kyuubi chakra, showing it to be just below the surface. Besides, in this position, she could easily stop any interference should Chuji try to interfere, which would simply get both him and Naruto killed. This was way above the abilities of Chuji. Meanwhile, Kimimaro gave Naruto an assessing glance. I thank you, Uzumaki-san, this has been a most invigorating battle. However, Orochimaru-sama's business is urgent, and my life is dedicated to his duty. I will kill you now. Giving Naruto a fanged grin, to which Naruto responded by sprouting 3 other chains in addition to the one through his arm, Kimimaro reached behind his shoulders. Dance of the Clematis, Vine. Shikamaru barely had the time to move before one of the strange worm-like creatures ghosted into his hiding place. Still, as he jumped away, the technique had grazed his arm. Immediately, a bone-aching exhaustion swept through him, as he stumbled on the landing and rolled onto the ground. Mocking laughter met his ears as he struggled to get up. There you are, shithead. For a moment I thought you had scurried away, like the rat you are. Shikamaru grimaced. That would be too troublesome to explain, troublesome woman, he grumbled. Make no mistake, I'm not here because I want to fight you. Shikamaru's hands twitched, unobtrusively forming a seal. However, as soon as his shadow started to extend, one of Tayuya's doki charged at him, forcing him to leap back. One-trick pony, Tayuya scoffed. Did you really think I wouldn't notice you forming seals? Then another of the physical energy leeches lunged at him, but this time, instead of Shikamaru jumping away, he simply stood in position, letting the strange leech pierce his body. Then, around the leech, his body began to blacken and bubble. Then a voice came from behind Tayuya. Kagemain no Jutsu, complete! Suddenly, Tayuya couldn't move, immobilized by the Nara clan jutsu. Then, without her volition, her body started to move, until she was brought before an utterly relaxed Shikamaru leaning lazily on a nearby tree, looking at her with a smirk. You know, you were correct when you said I couldn't fool a genjutsu user with a bunshin, and you were correct. However, a Nara can fool you with a Kuroi bunshin. Look! Her head unwittingly moved to look at the place where the now still doki had pierced the bunshin, which now contained just her doki and its spirit leech, both covered in a strange black cloak. Shadows, Shikamaru explained somewhat unnecessarily. They are solid enough to not be considered an illusion, yet they cannot contain any physical energy. So when your strange jutsu pinpointed my location, I just waited for it to commit to an attack it couldn't abort, and then substituted with the Kuroi bunshin I had placed there previously. When your attack tried to absorb non-existent physical energy, well. As they were watching, the captured doki began to creak, the black shadows seeping into its structure, creating crevices and cracks as it seemed to melt into it. Then, with a keening wail, the doki and its worm-like protrusion began to disintegrate. Watching Taiya's face twist in fury, Shikamaru smirked. As you can see, Nara clan jutsu use shadows, which do not play well with other types of energy. Sorry about that. He drawled, seemingly enjoying Taiya's anger. Just then, Shikamaru ducked to dodge a wild swing by one of the other doki, forcing Taiya to do the same. This time though, Taiya was the one grinning when they were upright again. So, shithead, what's your fucking idea to stop that? I'm the only one who can stop them, but as it is, you've fucking tied me up. Slowly Shikamaru brought his hands to his mouth, forcing Taiya to do the same with her flute. I saw you playing, and I can guess the melody. With that, Shikamaru began to mime the notes he wanted to play, but unlike before, Taiya was actively opposing him, making the melody choppy and unclear as Taiya fought Shikamaru for control. Beads of sweat were rolling off Shikamaru's face due to the exertion, but he held on doggedly, refusing to release Taiya from his technique. Damn it! If this goes on, I'll have to use that technique to finish the battle, and on top of it, I'm running out of chakra. Troublesome. The doki continued to stumble around, swinging wildly and showering both combatants with wood chips. Struggling, Taiya spoke. You've got a good head on your shoulders, shithead. But you're simply too weak for this level. Curse Seal Level 2, activate. Shikamaru barely managed to sever his connection to Taiya and leap back as ominous chakra blanketed the area, originating from Taiya. Her body was bubbling, changing considerably, with her hair becoming longer and lighter, her skin darker, along with a protrusion of horns emerging from her head. Jumping back, Shikamaru latched his shadows to those of the two remaining doki, hoping to use them to against Taiya while he figured out his next move. Taiya just stared at him blankly. Seriously? Do you think I'm a fucking idiot like you? Release. With a puff of chakra smoke, both remaining doki were unsummoned, leaving Shikamaru and Taiya facing each other on the opposite sides of the clearing, Shikamaru staring at Taiya, expressionless, while Taiya gave him a bloodthirsty leer. Well, it's just you and me now, shithead. Now how should I kill you? Kiba and Tenten were sprinting, stumbling in Kiba's case, across the riverbank while looking for a place to climb the cliff separating them from their comrades. Normally they would have simply tree-walked their way up the cliff, but Kiba was adamant that they not attempt it with his and Akamaru's condition. The mood between the two was tense. Kiba was still cross at Tenten for using exploding tags without warning him, while Tenten maintained that warning him would have made the whole attack useless, and that Kiba was just jealous that he had not had the kill. Of course, when she made the mistake of saying her opinion out loud, it started Kiba off on a tirade. Jealous? Because of your stupid explosion fetish, Akamaru got hurt, and I almost died. Why did you butt in anyway? I had the fight under control. Yeah right, the great Kiba was pulverizing the poor sound fools. Tenten said sarcastically. Face it, dogboy, you were being led around by your oversensitive nose. Kiba growled at the insult. What the hell's your problem anyway? You could have gone and bugged someone else, like that Niji bastard. I don't need a bloody kunoichi to babysit me. Tenten's eyes narrowed as she abruptly turned towards him. You better rephrase that, dog boy, she said between gritted teeth, as one of her eyebrows twitched in irritation. Or do you have anything against kunoichi? Startled at her vehemence, Kiba stammered incoherently. Tenten snorted, turning away. Thought so, you chauvinist pig. Suddenly, her instincts, honed by Gai-sensei's habit of randomly attacking his team, flared. Acting subconsciously, she twirled, unsealing a large wooden shield to cover her. With a schlink of wood against metal, a kunai stabbed itself to the hilt and through the hardened wood of the shield, missing her side by inches and leaving a gouge in the ground behind her. Tracing its trajectory, Tenten saw that it had been thrown by Kiba, and judging by her previous position, it had been aimed for her kidneys. With the force in the throw and the angle, it would have caught her side and lacerated both of her kidneys before exiting her body, causing an excruciating and slow death. It was one of the most advanced and disturbing places to target during a fight, and it could not be easily done. Konoha Academy trains students to go for the easier, more obvious choices like the heart or throat. Unbelievingly staring at Kiba, who seemed to have gone into shock, she settled into a defensive stance. Did you just try to kill me? The thought itself was ludicrous. Konoha shinobi were taught teamwork and loyalty from their very cradles, and betrayal and desertion was considered to be so abhorrent that even thinking about it was considered taboo, and the punishment for trying to kill a teammate was so horrific that deserting Konoha and having the Hunternians after you was considered to be better. In fact, the stakes were so high that only socially isolated shinobi with turbulent pasts had ever deserted Konoha, which meant that of the 12 rookie genin that had participated in the last Chunin exams, only Sasuke, Naruto, and Neji had ever fallen into the risk category. Kiba, who came from the renowned Inuzuka clan, had no possible reason to defect, and though they generally had hot tempers according to Gai-sensei, Kiba couldn't have expected to get away with it. Unless, of course, he wanted to kill her and make it look like the sound shinobi had killed her. But surely he wouldn't try to kill her just because of an argument? At least she hoped so. Trepidation growing, she cautiously brought out a pair of nunchucks as she approached Kiba. Then suddenly Kiba seemingly sprinted at her, while simultaneously trying to hold himself back, resulting in him tripping over himself and falling on his face. As Akamaru yelped and leapt clear of Kiba's falling body, Tenten crept forward cautiously towards the figure on the ground, which was writhing in apparent agony. By now she knew there was something very wrong with Kiba. Kiba-san? Then suddenly Kiba was looking at her with mismatched eyes, with the right side of his hair turning white and growing longer, and the skin slowly coloring brown. Struggling to speak, Kiba whispered, "Run? I can't control body." Akamaru whimpered, seemingly afraid to approach his partner. Tenten took a cautious step back, trying to understand what was happening. Then Kiba's face fell slack as he lunged at Tenten with a kunai. Looking into the forests of the north from her seat in the Hokage tower, Tsunade felt a shiver of premonition. Below her, the village was a beehive of activity, and her ANBU had reported that the story of the Uchiha's desertion was the hottest news in the gossip circles. She knew where the information had leaked from. The kunoichi in the newest generation seemed unable to grasp the meaning of discretion. Tsunade had half a mind to place the lot of them in punishment detail for this particular blunder, but she supposed the results of their actions would be punishment enough. If Sasuke had been retrieved without the story spreading far and wide, there had been a chance that the Uchiha would have been able to get away scot-free. However, seeing as the whole of Konoha knew by now that the last loyal Uchiha had deserted the village for their most hated enemy of the moment, Sasuke would face forced genetic donation followed by forced seppuku, at best. A mirthless smile graced Tsunade's lips at the thought. In a way, his fangirls had signed the Uchiha's death warrant. But she had no time, nor inclination, to worry about the non-existent future of an Uchiha. She was instead worrying over her favorite genin, one Uzumaki Naruto, who had gone on the mission to retrieve the said Uchiha. The conversation she had had with her grandmother prior to their leaving for the mission still echoed in her mind, filling her with anxiety. Flashback. "You know, this is a dangerous game you are playing, Tsutsu." Tsunade, who had been trying to burrow her head into the wooden desk, jerked up at the sound. Looking up from the cozy nest she had made with her arms, she resisted the urge to groan when all of her ANBU detail were out cold on the floor, again. "My games aside, that is really not good for them, grandmother," Tsunade stated drily, looking at her snoring guards with an expression halfway between exasperation and amusement. Though she supposed it was a welcome change after all the headaches that blasted Uchiha had caused her, it was too early to deal with anything other than a hangover cure, damn it. If they get caught in a genjutsu that only traps an unsuspecting mind while they are on guard detail, they deserve any neck cramps they get, you know. Mito's response was just as dry as her granddaughter's. "Plus I don't see you doing much better, you know. You didn't even notice me enter and I knocked out all your guards without you even noticing." Sniffing a bit, her lips narrowed. "And you've been drinking again, haven't you?" Tsunade groaned, dropping her head back into her arms. "Give me a break, grandmother. I've got a killer headache. The council's breathing down my neck, those two old fossils won't stop pestering me, and that spoiled brat of an Uchiha had to choose now of all times to run off to Snake Face. Do you know how much meetings this is going to cause? And paperwork. I swear I'll kill that brat myself." "Get in line," Mito scoffed, sounding uncharacteristically bitter. "If Naruto-kun doesn't stain his hands with the traitor's blood, I might kill the bastard myself, and I will make him suffer." Tsunade looked at her, shocked. "Grandmother? You don't even know that little self-obsessed headcase." Mito snorted. "I saw him once. I don't believe I ever want to repeat that experience. That boy is a collection of his clan's worst attributes, you know." She sighed. "Though I have to say, Tsutsu, your summons came at the worst possible, not to mention downright dangerous moment in our training." "Oh?" Tsunade asked, quirking an eyebrow. "Why is that, he should be able to function with his old skills during any battles, and I need the safety net that Naruto and you will provide for the mission," she asked, before continuing to grumble. "It's not like I have any jounin or chunin to spare, what with the bloody border patrols, and that gnome of a Tsuchikage probing our lines." Mito snorted. Focused Tsutsu. "Now as for your earlier question, the reason is that Naruto's body is still adapting to its changes, not to mention the changes to the seal." "What changes to the seal?" Tsunade interjected, alarmed. Mito groaned. "Come on, Tsutsu. I've told you about the effects of the Uzumaki bloodlines, especially of the spike chains. And you should know anyway, you were friends with the user." "What do you mean, grandmother? Kushina only told me she could suppress chakra with it." Mito smirked triumphantly. "But did she ever tell you why?" Tsunade looked at her, puzzled. "What do you mean?" "Normal spike chains don't suppress chakra. It was unique to Kushina, and for a simple reason. That particular expression has a rather strange ability, seal transference." Tsunade looked at her warily. "And what does that do?" Mito sighed. "It channels the abilities of any seal that is linked to the user's very self. Since Kushina's Jinchuriki seal, which I designed, was in itself a chakra suppression seal, her chains gained the ability to suppress chakra themselves. Seeing as Naruto has not yet gained full control over his powers, and the fact that the isolation seal I put on top of his Jinchuriki seal wouldn't have a ghost of a chance if he got angry, do you see the problem?" Tsunade looked at her, troubled. "You think that the chains could become a conduit for the Kyuubi to come out?" Mito ran her hand over her face tiredly. "If only that. No, Tsutsu, if Naruto is pushed hard enough at this time, he would channel the essence of the seal. And with what Kushina's husband used to bind the seal." Tsunade reared back in horror. "You don't mean the Shinigami?" End flashback. Tsunade was pulled out of her reverie by the sound of hurried footsteps, before a messenger burst into her office, panting. "Apologies, Tsunade-sama. Urgent message from the lookouts in the north gate." Tsunade could already feel the headache coming on. "What is it?" "There's a report of a strange jutsu being used in our northern forest, something about crimson chakra chains." Tsunade turned around, her chair crashing into the ground. "What did you say the color was?" "CC crimson, Tsunade-sama." Tsunade gritted her teeth. "That's it," she declared, ignoring the messenger's wince at her tone. "I've had enough of this." Turning to face the frightened messenger, she ordered, "Inform the council that the village is in lockdown. Send for the Hokage guard, and send Kakashi a message that he's got exactly 5 minutes to get here if he doesn't want to be in punishment detail for the rest of his life. Emergency mission, possible S rank. Go!" As the messenger scurried away, Tsunade searched her desk for her combat attire. Now if Snakeface were there, then it'll be a party, she thought wryly as she strapped her equipment pouch on, before staring out of her window at the northern forest. Squinting, she could just make out something that looked like a tentacle poking through the wooded expanse. So that was where Naruto was. At least he was alive. "Whatever happens, brat, don't die out there." Kimimara's bone whip slashed into a rolling figure, which went up in smoke as 2 thick chain-like chakra constructs barreled into him from the other side of the clearing. Wincing slightly at their speed, he held his dance of the clematis, flower-encrusted hand as an impromptu shield. The 2 chains slammed into the curling bone lance, sending bone chips flying as Kimimaro skidded back from the force of the impact. Even as he used his dinosaur-like tail to steady himself, Kimimaro pushed back at the chains with his bone-covered arm, even as his other hand swung his bone whip at the source of the chains, the ligaments between the vertebrae stretching grotesquely as they tried to wrap around the figure, only to meet a barrier in the form of an increasing cage of chakra chains surrounding him. "You are now starting to annoy me, Konoha Shinobi." Kimimaro's monotonous voice floated around the clearing. In the other end of it, Chuji, still nursing his wounds, winced at the threat in the voice, while Mito, in the very center of the rather large patch of wood devastated by the fight, bristled, looking up from her intent examination of the barrel containing Sasuke. The fight between Kimimaro and Naruto was fierce, with them equal in their speed and agility, with Naruto's multiple chains countered by Kimimaro's dance of the clematis techniques. Both of them were panting as they dodged each other's attacks, cuts littering their bodies from near misses. Then, suddenly, in the middle of yet another deadlock, Kimimaro suddenly stiffened, before his techniques faltered as he spat out blood. Immediately capitalizing on the opening, 2 chains immediately tore into Kimimaro, one piercing his upper thigh and spearing his tail as the other dug into the whip-wielding hand. Hurriedly jumping away while absent-mindedly forming bone plates above his cuts to slow his bleeding, Kimimaro's lips set into a thin line. "I will not die before I fulfill Orochimaru-sama's purpose," he declared, looking mutinously at the panting Uzumaki before him. Naruto smirked, flashing Kimimaro a bloody grin. Then you'll probably have to try being immortal, Kagaya. Kimimaro gritted his teeth as he prepared to fight, a sense of futility seeping into him. Even if he defeated this monstrosity, he would still have to fight the disappearing woman and the fat boy. On top of that, his curse seal was enhancing his disease to the point of no return. He would be lucky to survive long enough to report to Orochimaru-sama. Trying to fight through the pain, he stumbled, suddenly feeling dizzy as his knees hit the ground. His mind was getting fuzzy, and his sense of vertigo was increasing, even as he instinctively blocked Naruto's attempts to land a hit on him. Blood was filling his mouth, and he could feel rivulets of blood flowing down his wounded arm through the plates of bone, and his sense of balance was worsening. Then, with an ominous crack, wood splints showered the clearing as the barrel containing Sasuke burst open. Mito, closest to the explosion, barely managed to cross her arms over her face before the explosion tore into her, throwing her into a nearby tree. Immediately afterwards, Naruto felt an immense drain on his chakra as Mito's seal automatically diverted some of his chakra to healing her chakra shell. Letting out an involuntary groan, Naruto sank to his knees in exhaustion, even as the chakra smoke obscuring the remains of the barrel dissipated, showing a monstrous figure standing on the remains of the barrel. Two leathery, hand-like protrusions emerged from the shoulder blades of the creature, and glaring crimson eyes stared at the prone figures of the fighters through long locks of gray hair. Crimson eyes, with spinning black tomo in them, that widened as they took in the destruction of the clearing. Then the color bled out of the figure, starting from his extremities and reaching towards his shoulder. The creature grew smaller, the leathery hand-like wings disappeared, and then the last remnants of the transformation, black tribal marking, drew back, leaving a pale Sasuke standing in the middle of the clearing. Naruto glared at Sasuke through lidded crimson eyes. Sasuke stared back, the glow of the Sharingan hypnotic in the gloom of the forest. The forest was quiet. Any and all fauna had been driven miles away by now, with the continuous clashes of ninja within the forest. The only sounds to be heard were Kimimaro's insistent coughing, and Chuji's somewhat hysterical gasps. Mito was still healing from the damage she had taken when the barrel had unexpectedly broken open. Then, Sasuke scoffed. "You're the one they sent to stop me, Dobe? They could have as well told me to stay away." Naruto looked incensed. Chuji, looking from the sidelines, saw his canines peek out of his mouth as a warning growl burst from his throat. When he spoke, his voice was rougher than normal, sounding feral as he glared daggers at the Uchiha. "I bet you're proud of yourself, huh, Sasuke? I hope you know you've just signed the death warrant of not only yourself, but the entire Uchiha clan. What a wonderful clan heir you turned out to be, but then I suppose you never were, you know. After all, Itachi is the Uchiha clan heir." Sasuke's Sharingan spun in irritation as he grit his teeth. However, before he could retort to Naruto's taunt, a shaky voice cut in. "Sasuke-sama? Orochimaru-sama sends his regards, but you must hurry. You will be late. Go. I will hold them off." "And you are?" Kagaya Kimimaro, previous leader of the Sound Five. Looking between Naruto and Kimimaro, Sasuke paused, indecisive. Then he shook his head, before speaking without turning to face him. "Very well. Do not let them follow. I have no time for the likes of them." Turning abruptly, Sasuke sprinted into the forest. With a growl, Naruto leapt to his feet, running after Sasuke, only to run straight into the path of Kimimaro's bone vine. Muttering a curse in his throat, he turned to stare murder on the Kagaya. "You are going to regret that." In a flash, the surrounding was overwhelmed with clones, each of them carrying a Rasengan as they charged at Kimimaro, who was panting with exhaustion and coughing blood. He gave the approaching Naruto's a somber glance. "So it has finally come to this, no matter. I shall die as I have lived, in the service of Orochimaru-sama." Dance of the Seedling Fern. Bones sprouted from the ground, sharp-tipped curved bones of enormous sizes sprouting all over the patch of forest, making it resemble a monster's graveyard. Most of Naruto's clones had been dispelled in the attack, however a few had managed to cling onto the rising surfaces, while another had managed to rescue the unconscious Mito. Chuji, looking shell-shocked, had just managed to scramble onto an unharmed tree, and he was now waving frantically to Naruto. "Naruto! You go after Sasuke, I take care of things here." Gesturing wildly at the forest of bones, he looked at Naruto with a small grin. "Besides, this is more suited to my style anyway. Multi-size technique, human bullet tank." As Chuji began to carve a path of destruction through the newly created bone forest, Naruto positioned himself in the middle of the bone field. "Don't be mad. I've seen these types of Kekkei Genkai before, and if this is what I think this is, it isn't going to be pretty." Suddenly, all the surviving clones of Naruto began to pop. Well, Naruto thought as his clones continued to dispel, at least he doesn't seem to be able to identify me from the clones. Settling into a meditative stance, Naruto closed his eyes in order to obtain a fledgling sense of where Kimimaro was. After all, he had seen this very same tactic with Haku in the Land of Waves. It was never good news when an elemental Kekkai Genkai user disappeared into the element of his choice. Suddenly, he noticed the warped chakra of Kimimaro, right behind Chuji, hiding inside a bone spear. Chuji, get away! Even as Chuji, still in his round form, bounced up and out of the clearing, 6 spiked chains shot out of Naruto, each traversing the length of the bone field and each at a slightly different height from the other. Kimimaro, half out of the bone spear, barely had time to look shocked, as the chains began to spin along their axis, forming 6 drills that tore away nearby bone spears. Naruto held his hands out horizontally, away from his body. Well, we'll see how this works. Spiked chains, atomic separator. Naruto spun in place, and the spinning chakra chains whipped through the bone forest with the scraping sound of ground bone. Kimimaro, trapped in place by the very technique he had used, attempted to form a bone cage around him, but before he could complete the bone growth, the first of the chains smashed into his stomach with a spray of blood. Kimimaro's screams echoed around the clearing, as one by one, 5 more of the rapidly spinning chains crashed into his half-emerged body. When Naruto's technique finally stopped, a silence descended on the clearing. Chuji, safely out of the range of the clearing, gulped nervously. He seemed to be holding back the urge to retch, and as the bone splinter settled, Naruto understood as the area around where Kimimaro had been was bathed in blood, the same brackish blood Naruto had noticed in Jirobu. And in the center, half buried in the bone he was exiting, were what remained of Kimimaro, resembling not so much a human as a lump of shredded meat. Doing his best to ignore the carnage he had caused, Naruto turned away from the sight to look at Chuji, who flinched, not meeting his eyes. Naruto, ignoring the reaction, tonelessly spoke. Well, now we don't have a barrel to protect, you better go help the others. Looking to the north, where the Uchiha had vanished to, he growled. Sasuke is mine. Gulping, Chuji spoke as he turned away, preparing to go after the renegade Uchiha. Naruto, are you sure you can fight? He gestured to Naruto's battered form and his tattered clothes. Naruto simply gave him a bloodthirsty grin before turning back and disappearing into the forest, followed by a silent clone carrying the form of Mito. His voice floated back to a petrified Chuji. More than enough to kill the fool. Chuji stared at the forest into which Naruto had disappeared, before shrugging and following him. He might as well regroup with Shikamaru. He would know what to make of this, anyway. As Naruto silently tree-hopped, following the trail of Sasuke, he was deep in thought. The last technique he had used in the clearing had been one he had invented during practice last night, and Mito had immediately vetoed his use of the technique until he was more proficient at the manipulation of the chains. She had thought that Naruto had not been ready to see the destruction caused by, in her words, a crude and inelegant technique. Naruto had vehemently disagreed, before he had been reluctantly cowed into not using it by Mito. At that time, he had considered Mito to be stifling him, to be coddling him from a reality he considered himself exposed to from his youth. Now though, after he had seen the results of his more destructive jutsu, he was beginning to reconsider his opinion. Naruto had had a rough childhood. Growing up on the civilian sectors of Konoha, so soon after the Kyuubi disaster, had not been easy for a child publicly known to be the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. However, now that he thought about it, it had also allowed him a certain disassociation with the realities of life in Shinobi Village. Naruto had never killed before this mission, which had proved a surprise to Jiraiya when he had inquired on Naruto's first kill, back when he had been training for the Chunin exam. He had been offended at the time, thinking that Jiraiya had been implying that he was a monster, before Jiraiya had sat down to explain. Naruto's techniques, simply put, were not aimed towards capture. Even the basic Kuchiyose jutsu that Naruto could employ was geared towards straight combat. Naruto supposed that it was even more so with his Uzumaki chakra expression. After all, there wasn't many ways to not kill when using giant chains with foot-long blades poking out from every link. However, whether from Kakashi's design, or his own unpredictable luck, he had, until now, managed to avoid killing anyone. He scoffed derisively. Well, that had lasted long enough. Now, 7 months into his shinobi career, Naruto had taken his first life, and just now he had taken his second. And he now understood what Mito had meant when she had said that using that technique would haunt him. Naruto was not sure he would be able to stop hearing that final scream of Kimimaro. Jiraiya, when discussing kills with him, had told him a lucky shinobi gets a clean kill. Naruto supposed he could understand that. Naruto's first kill had been Jirobu, but at the time he had been too drowning in the Kyuubi's chakra, and he had barely noticed the actual kill. On the contrary, Kimimaro had been killed in a conscious decision, one that had little to do with him, and more to do with time. On top of that, the death had been prolonged, and extremely messy, and as Naruto was directly connected to his chains, he had felt as each blade had entered Kimimura's body again and again as the blades cut into him. It was, after all, the reason he had named the technique Atomic Separator. When he had tried the technique on the training logs, each log had been roughly gouged into sawdust by the fast-spinning blades. However, that had not prepared him for what Kimimura's corpse had looked like after being exposed to the technique, a fine mushy blob of pinkish flesh, draining blood onto the surroundings. Naruto shuddered, trying to distract himself from the images. He did not need to be freaking out when he was going to face Sasuke in what was sure to turn out to be a death match. Whatever his other faults, Sasuke was a skilled shinobi, and his Sharingan was hard to counter. Suddenly, a giant humanoid construct lumbered into sight, blindly swinging a giant club, before it suddenly disappeared in a cloud of chakra. A summon? Here? Well, if thought rationally, that had to mean that there was some sort of sound shinobi nearby, probably engaging one of his teammates. He was less sure of who the controller of the summon was, though he supposed it couldn't be the six-armed one, so it was probably the Kunoichi or the two-headed shinobi. Naruto smirked. He would bet on Shikamaru fighting the Kunoichi. The pineapple-haired Chunin was just unlucky that way. Anyway, he couldn't help them personally. He had to stop the idiot before he crossed the border, or risk open war with the sound. Not that Konoha couldn't take them on, but according to Ghost Lady, Bachan didn't want open war just yet. And shadow clones were out of the question. Not only would they be useless without him to direct them in battle, seeing as they still had the tendency to fight each other, but his chakra was getting low as it was. He hoped it would recover before the fight, or he might have to rely on the Kyuubi's chakra, and it was not fun. Well, seeing as the opponent was a summon user, albeit of non-living creatures, he supposed he could help. Running through a series of hand seals and nicking his thumb, he slapped a branch as he hopped past it. Kuchiyos no Jutsu,